You're still waiting for the broadcast to restart? Will it take us a second or so?
Really want to start that, like, before you know, like, when it gets cold, but that's what Cyrus too. It's a buffering thing. We can't.
No, it says streaming. But technically, you should be able to pull it up on your phone on YouTube and search City of Muskego and see it. So.
Should I?
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing is,
So it's definitely got the audio. I can.
Are the patch cords in the right place?
Yeah, I can. The audio is getting picked up. So. You see it? Is it a black screen with the city logo? Yeah. Paul.
I'm dancing.
Did you check the cameras?
Oh, in the.
I have not checked the patch cords yet.
Here,
See, this server doesn't have the card in it. Oh, you're doing that?
another adapter to another adapter, and then this is pulling video. It should be pulling video. Yeah, he took it. It was going to this ViewSonic TV, and then we pulled that, and then it's.
So the TV has its own.
TV should have. So a scene. That it looks like that. No.
Need anything for me?
ever touch the patch cam, let me show you what it's like. Yeah.
The other one is
I mean, you just have to verify that it looks like everything.
well, yeah, I turned all this on. The only thing that's not on is the audio, which we don't want to do and everything. We'll talk about it next time.
Can't believe you pushed it, dude. The lights are already on.
Mike's on.
Yeah, the lights are.
But they're on. I'm here. Maybe it's still on. But it's in the back. Push cam command, push preset 2.
Push cam to the camera, top right, push camera. So now if we ever need to change, do that again, granted, they'll probably give us a day's notice at least, and be like, here's,
Okay, so go in there, unless you want to talk.
Put it on my phone.
I'm gonna go turn the volume up on the TV.
Well, I have it, I'll pull it up on here,
Okay.
and see if
And
it.
talk and see, like, there's probably gonna be a delay.
Did you turn it off?
No?
No.
Hold up. Try and refresh your screen.
City of us.
It works.
What?
I just heard you and me talking when I walked in there.
How the heck isn't it working on my?
I don't know. I don't care about your phone. I care about this. So,
So you
it's
turn
gonna say
that off?
on air mute.
You turn that off?
I just turned the mics off. You want it back on?
Well, because then I'll have to come here, right? And then stop. And now pending stop. Not streaming.
Yeah, I'd like to say my batteries are almost fully recharged, but I need a vacation from my vacation.
Well, that's usually how it goes.
Work was not terribly productive. I hate to admit that. I did. I started sanding my toes. I just wish they had to put on pants in 10 days.
This winter just doesn't want to go
I
away.
know it does. It's reminding us that she's in charge.
The other one.
Dim sitting here. Swipe up.
It's gotta be aired.
Now again. Oh. There you go. All right. Apple. My kids saw that.
We gotta get another room set up for it.
Overflow.
I don't know if anybody's in it, but we got that set up.
Just in case.
I'm guessing not, because we still have this.
What is there in the new bigger? What's the timeline?
So that we can shut down a day or something.
Right.
I don't think it'll be more than a day. Reserve the right to make it feasible. I mean, I think it'll only be a day.
Right.
I just don't want to promise if things don't go well.
What's that?
Okay, good. Okay, good evening. I'm going to call the Plan Commission meeting to order Tuesday, April 9th, 2018 at 6:07, I think, p.m. Would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, roll call. Mayor Shavarati, Commissioner Graff,
Here.
Commissioner Pearden,
Here.
Alderman Kabaki,
Here.
Commissioner Jacks, Commissioner Buckmaster,
Here.
Commissioner Bartlett,
Here.
Planner Trezbitowski.
Here.
and statement of meeting notice.
The agenda was posted and distributed to all news media requesting notification in accordance with the open meeting laws on March 29th, 2018.
Thank you. And we have approval of the March 6th, 2018 meeting minutes.
I'll second.
Any discussion on those minutes? Okay, please cast your vote. The minutes approved unanimously. Then we have two public hearings tonight. I know they're somewhat related, but they have to be held separately per law. So I just want everybody to understand that. Anybody who wishes to speak when we get to that, you can just come up to the microphone, state your name and address. You do not need to fill out a form. However, if anybody wants to talk after the hearing at one of the agenda items, other items, then you need to fill out the form and bring it up to Kelly. So, public hearing, first one.
Public hearing for a conditional use grant in accordance with the Muskego zoning ordinance for Casey's General Store for the purpose of allowing a gas station on the property located on Janesville Road and Mercury Drive.
Okay, Adam?
Thank you, Mayor.
I'm just going to do a quick overview and then we'll get to the info.
Yeah, we'll talk about more details later on after the comments. But overview, the first public hearing here for the location of the property on Janesville Road and Mercury Drive. This is on a site that currently houses what used to be the Journal Sentinel. distribution building now is currently a construction company. That building is still staying as part of this proposal. This proposal is to divide a lot off between that building and the corner. So I know there's some questions on that. So this is a new proposed gas station and convenience store on that intersection. Current zoning in the B2 zoning does allow this use with a conditional use grant. A conditional use grant requires the hearing, which is here in front of us tonight.
Okay. All right, so with that said, anyone who wishes to speak can line up or just wait till the next person is done. Just come up and state your name and address.
Are you going to talk to, are you going to ask people that sign the sheets to come up first, or you want us just to start up?
Well, I don't know. Is that how you do it? I don't think so. You just come up, because they sign in, they don't necessarily want to speak.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thomas Ralston, South 81, West 19386 Highland Park Drive. I would be living across the road and across the street from this proposed gas station. And for pretty obvious reasons, I'm opposed to it, as I'm aware of many of my neighbors. Simply what you're doing is you're putting a gas station into a neighborhood. You're just right across the street, or across Janesville Road. And you have deliveries of gasoline, all of the convenience store items. It'll be, I don't even know what the hours of this place is. It's going to be 24 hours that they're going to be open.
That'll all be addressed during our discussion.
Okay. So if you have a 24-hour-a-day gas station, you're going to have 24-hour-a-day deliveries and traffic. And you're basically putting a gas station where people live, right across the road. People work hard, they want to come home, they want to have their peace and quiet, which is Muschego's main sell. And when you have a business that runs 24 hours, you have the traffic. Obviously, there's always somebody stealing, there's always somebody ripping out of a gas station parking lot to beat the gas pump price, and we just don't need it right across the road. This is the kind of business that just doesn't belong in a neighborhood, and that's what you're being asked to consider. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Skip Winuski, South 103, West 19439 Kelsey Drive. I also own a building and a business on Apollo Drive, right behind the proposed area, and I do not have a problem with the gas station going in there. We need to fuel up our trucks when we go out, usually on a regular basis, every other day, and our service vans as well. So it'd be more convenient for us, instead of going across town to Johnny's or Jets, something right on the corner for us to get fuel.
Kathleen Luglio, S80W19297. Thank you. Highland Park Drive, and I need a point of clarification before I go any further. Is this now being expanded to include the existing building to be part of this new Casey's?
That building stays as is.
The building stays as is. It is the raw land that is going to be. Okay, fine. I got a little confused there. Okay, well, I oppose this building. I, again, live across the street from that area, and I have a presumption of quiet time because I have a residential area. I would like quiet against this. The building, I attended a meeting previously. I was told that this building would have a start time of approximately 5 a.m. until midnight. I assure you that my sleep time starts before midnight, and it should extend beyond 5 a.m. So you're interfering with all of us neighbors in our sleep times. 5 a.m. start means that you're going to be plowing well earlier than 5 a.m. And so you're very much interfering with our area's rest time. You are interfering with the normal cycle of a residential area. And that frontage is so large that it becomes the largest frontage of any gas station in Muskego, virtually the longest frontage of any gas station I've ever seen outside of one at the edge of a highway and certainly much larger than anything I would like to see in our suburban community. And I don't know what can be done to mitigate that looking like a highway gas station. It is simply misplaced to put that kind of a gas station in that area. And so I do not feel that belongs in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Dan Drager, pardon me, South 78, West 20263 Monterey Drive. I too am opposed to this development for several reasons. There's a question of how much noise pollution, how much light pollution, how much traffic is this going to generate, and how are we going to address traffic concerns and just general public safety. I don't know what the traffic counts are on Janesville Road right now, but just from my own subjective being there during drive time in the morning and the evening, that intersection of Apollo and Janesville is pretty busy. It's sometimes difficult to actually turn the way you want to due to the traffic. And if we're going to add more traffic on top of that, I'm afraid it's going to cost some considerable money to improve that intersection, possibly signalize it, which may cost over $200,000 alone. I just don't think it's worth it. And my personal opinion as a geographer is that's not the best use for that property, and that they should locate elsewhere. And finally, at the earlier public meeting that Casey's called, we did a two-question poll. Do you want Casey's in the community? Everyone's raised their hand and said yes. Do you want it at this Janesville Road location? Nobody wanted it there. I don't know if that figures into your calculus for granting or denying a particular permit, but I think you should consider it even if you don't have to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dave Schnitka. I'm a 24-year resident of Muskego, and I've spent the last 16 years in Lake Forest subdivision, which is right across the street from the proposed gas station and convenience store. I'm here to state my opposition to the convenience store going into that particular property, and my concerns are traffic, crime, and its impact on property values. We've heard a number of people mention traffic. I leave every day around 8 o'clock from that intersection. Today, it's not easy to turn left to head east on Janesville Road. It's rather difficult. I think by putting that property in that location, what you're going to do is you're going to push it to the tipping point of having to put a stop and go light in there. Now that makes things even worse. For the people that live in that subdivision, Lake Forest as well as Highland, now you might have to wait a minute or two to turn left onto Janesville Road rather than just waiting for something to open up. So traffic would be my first concern. Crime would be my second. Muskego is a very safe community. Let me ask you this one question. When is the last time we had an armed robbery in Muskego, and where was it? Anybody remember? Mobile gas station on the east side of town, okay? We do not have a lot of armed robberies in Muskego, but when you have armed robberies and you have theft, that appears in logs, that gets logged. And when people look to buy property, what's the first thing they want? They want a safe subdivision, okay? When you have crime next to homes, that makes those homes less valuable. And most of the people in here live very close to where that proposed gas station's meant to be. So while you might put a piece of property up that's worth a couple $1 million on the south side of Janesville, what you'd be asking is the people on the other side of Janesville to make a financial sacrifice. Because what would happen is that crime would reduce our property values. I'm not saying the property values would go down 50% or anything crazy. Let's just throw a simple fact. Let's just say the property values go down 1%. And I'm just talking Lake Forest subdivision. There's 170 homes in there. 1% of that property is worth $600,000. Let's say it just a little bit more. Now we're at 2%. Our property values go down just a little, 2%. $1.2 million. So while you might have gained property value on one side of the street, you're asking people on the other side of the street to pay a price to put that property in. So property values one of my biggest concerns. Just when you think about buying a house, you think of a realtor term called curb appeal. If you go and put, when you approach that subdivision, you see three things. You see the farmhouse, you see the pond, and you see the beautiful signage that says Lake Forest. Very, very attractive. Now you go and put a stop and go light in there. That changes the curb appeal of the subdivision. It makes the subdivision not look quite as nice. It's not the country subdivision that it used to be. People talk. There's crime nearby. You have the light. People start to say, well, Lake Forest isn't as nice as it used to be. That drives down property values, back to my original argument. So what I'm asking is, take into consideration what happens. Putting that property in there has an impact. Things go up and things go down. What goes down? What goes down is the curb appeal of the subdivision. We're closer to crime. What goes up? The value of the property to the city. You're gonna generate more property. You're gonna generate more taxes off of that. But the people across the street are paying for that. And I'm just talking one subdivision, not even Highland Park. But let's do the right thing here. Let's not shoehorn this thing into a tiny piece of property with no expansion. Let's not put retail right in between residential and industrial. Start by letting them build on the other side of town. Put retail next to retail. Don't shoehorn that in over there. That just doesn't make common sense to anybody here. So I'm asking you to think about this decision that you're going to make, and think about it as if you were the owner of the farmhouse across the street. Have that be a part of your decision. How would you feel if you lived right across the street? And decide as if that were your property. So I thank you for your time, and I'm assuming that you're going to make a great decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, my name is Matt Watry. I'm also a 26-year resident of Lake Forest at West 193, South 7905, Ancient Oaks Drive. I just want to reiterate what the majority of the people up here have said. Industrial Park makes a pretty good neighbor. It wakes up in the morning, people go to work, it pretty much closes in the evening as people go home. This gas station would not be that. This would be whatever its hours were. It's certainly going to be past the general shutting down of the industrial park there. And as the other gentleman elegantly spoke about, this is looking at our property values. And the traffic that would be generated by this, putting a gas station in essentially a residential area, and most likely the future need of a stoplight or the hassle of entering and exiting the Lake Forest subdivision, would certainly do something to drive down the property values of a very desirable neighborhood in Muskego. And as he said, it's not going to drive them down a huge percentage, but if you take 1 or 2% of everybody's property value and push that down a little bit, because it is not as desirable to pull up to our entrance and see a gas station across the street. So I'm just hoping you make a decision that this is not a good use for that corner, as it is a corner of an industrial park. As he also stated, let's put commercial and retail. By commercial and retail, and leave our little industrial section as it is. Thank you.
And the next person, please no applauding. That's not what the hearing is for. Thank you.
My name is Anthony Walter, West 192, South 8013, Ancient Oaks. I do not want to look at a stoplight from my driveway. I'm about 4 houses in from Janesville Road in the Lake Forest subdivision there. And that intersection is already challenging enough as it is without any further improvements there. But to have lights, traffic, even just the lights from a convenience store like this, I don't see the benefit of anything going in there that it can't get at the Quick Trip. That's a block down the road. They have a full-service gas station there. They have a full-service convenience store. Having this extra entity in a very quiet neighborhood offshoot of the Muskego area, I think would be very detrimental. People have talked about the property values already, and really to improve that intersection, you'd have to put in the stoplights. I never would have purchased there. I never would have bought in Muskego in that subdivision if I had to sit on my driveway and look at stoplights all day long. So I think just the general safety of that intersection, along with the unnecessary need to have a convenience store another block away from a full-service gas station already existing there. Thank you.
Thanks. Next person.
Bob Melcher, S78W20229, Monterey Drive in Muskego. I'm in the Lake Forest subdivision as well, and I think the gas station would be a very poor place there on that particular roadway to have a gas station there. The interesting thing about Casey, though, is the fact that Casey calls itself a general store. No one has talked really very much about that general store idea, but it's very easy. When I was an alderman sitting up there, I know we closed down Express X, as it was called. I think back then it was a Citgo station. And we closed it down because of the sale of alcohol to minors. There were any number of times we shut it down, and at one point, I believe it was for 30 days, Express X is no longer a gas station. It is out of business. So we're thinking of putting another gas station in. But a general store would also be selling beer and liquor. The ideal place to buy beer and liquor then, and take it over to the county park. I live directly behind the county park, and there is any number of teenagers that go over to the county park after dark. And they can drink anything they want. They can have anything they want. Remember that Wisconsin is the highest state in the United States in terms of alcohol-caused crashes and accidents. So what are we doing in terms of opening up that particular area to even more accidents? A police car does go through that area on occasion, through the park, but it isn't totally controlled. There is rangers there, but I've seen when I have booked a particular area there, 1 or 2 rangers at most. So my great fear is exactly the general store approach. We wanted also to get a Sendik's into the mall that was right next to the PNC Bank, and Sendik's bowed out. So we have a Pick and Save and we have a Piggly Wiggly. What does a general market do to any other store moving into the area or wanting to move in? We have a Walmart, of course, and we have an Aldi's. But if we want to get a larger market store into the area, this is going to be a problem in terms of that. I also did some research on the website of Casey General Store. And half of the people who were workers there, they did a survey of them, and half of them were very disappointed in the establishment and working there. The hours were short, the pay was extremely low, and we're talking about 24 hours. People could not really support themselves. They stayed a short time and moved on to another location. So in my mind, it would be a very poor idea. And also, of course, in that review of Casey General Store, they talked about pizza as a specialty. We have 2 pizza locations now in Muskego. That was one of the high points that the employees talked about, is buying and selling pizzas and delivering them to other locations. So we would have that as well as, they said, a very hot kitchen, which would be a possibility for fire. So that's some of the reasons why I am against this Casey General Store going into that particular location. I agree with what has been said already, the stoplights, the pollution. If we're going to have diesel fuel there, we're going to have lots of pollution from diesel fuel. And that is very, very bad in terms of the climate, and it is going to be moving into our subdivision. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person.
Hello.
Name and address.
Chris Karn, West 194, South 8169, Highland Park Drive, Muskego. So we're in full force tonight. I'm a business strategy consultant by day, engineer by education. So when I look at this development, I did a lot of research. Did a lot of research based on, you know, what are the impacts, measurable impacts to gas station developments in this proximity to a residential neighborhood. Yes, you are putting a gas station at the entrance to a subdivision. You're also, an important number to think about is you're putting a gas station within 300 feet of a number of residential homes. Now that number is important because there's been a lot of research, a lot of studies by educational organizations, state agencies, and whatnot with respect to measurable impacts when a gas station is within this proximity to a residence. With regards to air pollution, yes, there's a lot of dissipation that happens in the atmosphere, but a lot of work has been done to look at one particular gasoline additive in particular. That additive is benzene. It's a known carcinogen. And if you look at a number of studies that were done, in fact, before I get to the studies, if you look at the APA guidelines for the placement of schools and hospitals, they suggest a minimum setback of 1,000 feet from a gas station when they're looking at a school, hospital, any type of public use development. That they check that because of how benzene travels through the air and how it dissipates through air control systems and everything else. The state of California has a documented has an ordinance or a state document that requires a minimum 300-foot setback from residential properties. They cite benzene as one of the drivers for it. Number of other agencies and educational places have done research with respect to benzene, and they find elevated benzene levels within 300 feet to 500 feet, but the sweet spot is right around that 300 to 500 foot range, both outdoor and indoor. And these amounts can be measured, and according to the World Health Organization, there is no safe level of benzene. So my primary concern with this development is the fact that you're putting an air polluter with a known carcinogen that's been proven to have measurable levels of a cancer-causing agent within 300 feet of homes where people live, children live, whatever. From a measurability standpoint, if this is allowed to proceed, my suggestion would be to require Casey's to do air quality studies within the 300 to 500 foot range of the proposed development. Take a baseline measurement prior to development, and then once it's in operation, they should be required to take the same measurements, both outdoor and indoor, to the impacted residents every 6 months, so you can compensate for seasonality changes and everything else, and be required to mitigate any measurable increases from baseline, because there is no safe level of benzene. You've got children living in that area. You've got people that stay home that are in their houses most of the day, and that's not even getting into the office spaces that are around this proposed development. With respect to light pollution, noise pollution, same kind of a thing. If you look at a number of studies that have been done, Institute of Transportation Engineers has a very good list of documents where they get into these types of studies. There's a logarithmic or an exponential increase in the impacts of noise and light once you achieve dusk. So again, you know, I don't know what the ambient or what the baseline measurements are now, but my expectation would be if this is allowed to go through, same type of a thing. You know, Casey's is going to be within X number of feet of a bunch of residential property owners. There's going to be some negative impacts for light pollution, noise pollution, just like with air pollution. Take a baseline measurement, take measurements later on. You could also look at their proposed traffic flows, traffic patterns, and look at mitigation. So from a light and noise pollution perspective, they should be required to mitigate any measurable increases in light and noise pollution based on a number of factors. I mean, I don't want to get into it here, but I'm sure if we looked at the proposals and things like that, those numbers are available. Natural barriers, fencing, other barriers, and based on the studies that I've seen with the proximity and the hours of operation that are proposed and the number of pumps and the size of the convenience store that's being proposed, you're looking at a requirement of a full coverage. So to the point where you can't even see Casey's from the street if you enact something like this, which should be enacted because you're looking at impact to residents from light and noise and other types of things. Getting to the ITE studies that I referenced, this will bleed into the traffic piece that I want to talk about. For every 1,000 square feet of a convenience store size, Institute of Traffic Engineers assumes or advises you're going to generate 800 to 1,200 trips per day per 1,000 square feet. So a 1,000 square foot facility, 800 to 1,200. A 2,000 square foot facility, you're looking at 1,600 to 2,400. That's just for the convenience store aspect of it, and that's a doubling up of the numbers because you've got people coming in and people coming out. So a trip is actually an inbound and an outbound. So you're for the 1,000 square foot, it's really 800 ins, 800 outs for a total of 600 on the low side, and then the high side is 1,200, so double that to 2,400. Now we get into the pumps. Each pump, again, referencing the same agency, Institute of Traffic Engineers or Transportation Engineers, you're looking at 100 to 130 trips per pump placement. So if we look at a standard proposal, I think when I looked at it, we were looking at about 10 pumps. You're looking at another 1,300 trips on the high side, 1,000 trips on the low side. So you're looking at increasing traffic onto and off of Janesville Road and through that subdivision bottleneck by about, if we take the low end, 1,000 plus 1,600, or 2,000 plus 1,600, you're looking at 3,600 total ins and outs. So you're going to have a traffic. You're going to generate. This is going to generate a traffic flow issue. So not only is the Janesville, Mercury Drive, Lake Forest entrance going to need to be mitigated, but what happens when somebody is presented with a traffic opportunity and they see a side street? They're going to divert. So not only are you looking at increasing that bottleneck area, you're also looking to increase traffic down Highland Park Drive, which cuts from Lake Forest subdivision down to Janesville Road, a residential neighborhood, children playing in the front yards, residents that are used to a normal, quiet neighborhood-like setting. You're going to have a lot of people cutting down because they're going to be ticked off that they've got to sit in traffic. Even if you put a stoplight in there, you're still going to have diversions on Highland Park Drive. That's just common sense. In addition, if you look at the balance of how the Apollo Park Industrial Park is arranged, you've got an entrance and an exit onto Janesville Road, but you also have multiple entrances and exits onto Racine Avenue. And if you watch that industrial park, you'll see that it's there's kind of a balancing act with how the traffic flow works inside that area. The people that are closer to Racine Avenue tend to enter and exit off of Racine. The people that are closer to Janesville will enter and exit off of Janesville. You put a gas station at the corner of Janesville and Mercury Drive, you're going to create diversion. People at the end of the day that would normally exit out onto Racine Avenue are going to be exiting onto Janesville Road. In terms of raw numbers, unless we do a traffic study, I mean, we're never going to come up with some totals, but using the Institute of Transportation Engineering guidelines, we're looking at 3,000 plus cars a day coming onto and off of Janesville. even a traffic light isn't going to resolve those traffic patterns. If I was making the decision and putting conditions on this permit, if this is allowed to proceed, my condition would be only allowing right turns into Casey's off of Janesville Road, only allowing right turns out of Casey's onto Janesville Road, and not allowing left turns at all, because you're just going to create chaos for people coming in and coming out. Plus, you're going to have truck deliveries and things like that, so you're going to have a lot of traffic. And this doesn't even get into if diesel is allowed in this facility, which I don't believe it should, because that will exponentially increase the benzene levels. And you're also going to exponentially increase light or noise pollution from idling diesel trucks and things of that sort. And you're going to have all of the delivery trucks in the industrial park coming up and just making a big noisy mess at the corner of Janesville and Mercury. That's the traffic piece of it. So, we're concerned about air quality, benzene levels. I believe those should be measured at Casey's expense and mitigated as part of the proposal. Light and noise, I believe, should be studied for residents within the 300-foot boundary, and also traffic impacts should be measured before any decision is made on this conditional use grant. Because I think mitigation should be a condition of the permit based on the fact that you're looking at a gas station within 300 feet of residences. And a lot of government bodies have purposely put setbacks and restrictions in place to say, nothing within 300 feet of a residential area because of these issues, not to mention the other, what I'll call soft things that also occur, which is the property values and everything else. But, if you look at measurable things, you've got the air, the pollution, the air quality, you've got the light and the noise, and then you've got the traffic. So those would be that's my 2 cents. Sorry for being long-winded.
Thank you. Next.
Hi, I'm Laura Tash, and I live in the farmhouse. I don't really know that I need to say anymore. I've lived in Muskego since 1968, except for when I went to college for the decade of the 80s, which was very fun. I am very concerned about this for all of the reasons that have already been stated. In addition to that, Casey's doesn't sell food. They sell stuff that's unhealthy as well. So nobody in this city needs to eat more pizza or donuts or junk food. It's not food, it's poison. So why do we want to add more of that to further debilitate the people of our community? In addition to we're going to die, personally me, probably of cancer from the, thank you for telling me that about those, whatever that benzene is. Who would have known? When Inpro came in, I worried about white light. Now I'm worried about, and swimming pool blue walls. Now I'm worried about benzene and poison. What's the point? We have a convenience store right down the street. I love business. I wouldn't mind having something across the street from my house, but this is the worst choice in something across the street from our house. In addition to that, our house is business. We don't have to have our house the way our house is. What if we decide we want out because we don't want to live here? And then our house is not the cute little oldest house in the city at the entrance to Lake Forest subdivision, but yet another business. I don't understand why we would do this, and I hope that you all make great decisions for the impact of this city, for the people who live here, not just because I live the closest, but just because it's the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person.
I'm Wayne Eichhorn. I live S80 W19280 Highland Park Drive in Muskego. We've been here since 1997. It's a wonderful town. I love what the city has done and with the roads and so on. In fact, we actually were thinking about moving several years ago, bought some lots, and my wife and I said, Why would we want to leave? We got great neighbors, and those lots are for sale now. But I study this. I take a look. Maybe I'm not a good speaker, but I like to study things out. And most of the things that I had to bring up, I just want to voice my opposition. Most of the things I wanted to bring up have been addressed already. But when you take a look at the traffic, for example, now when you are turning left, coming out of Ancient Oaks, going south, if you turn left, you have to watch very closely to get on the highway in order to make sure, because most of it is merging traffic, not just the cars coming back and forth, but it's those cars coming on, let's say, from Mercury Drive and so on. So that's difficult. And my major concern with this on traffic is now if you put up a gas station, some of these things have been already addressed, I know, as far as the opposition goes. But now you have more merging traffic, so it becomes impossible to find your way onto that road. It really will. When you're there, you understand the problems are if you're turning left or going straight. The other thing is there's a trail across the road, okay? Now, I often take our bikes, I take my grandkids there to the trail. It's difficult to get across the road, but not impossible, okay? Again, you've got cars more or less coming straight from one way or the other. Again, with the gas station, you're going to have cars merging in, and you have to predict which cars are coming in and when. It's going to be, as said before, impossible to get across that highway without some sort of improvements done, lights or whatever. Noise, okay? Now, I don't know if somebody has said this will not be open 24 hours, okay? But we do, the noise issue has been talked about here. And the fact is, when you read, for example, on 6617, Melissa Kress reported in Convenience Store News, Casey's converted 89 stores to 24-hour store format through fiscal 2017 alone. That brings it to 1,000 stores on 24 hours. In their fiscal 2018 plan, they intend to convert another 75 stores to 24 hours. And because we do know there's some pressure being given to Casey's, they need to get their share price up, okay? A company executive said they have seen strong sales growth by going to 24 hours. All right, so it tells me that the philosophy is to put more stores on 24 hours. Crime, that's been talked about. Much better than I could ever speak about it. But the facts are 6% of robberies in convenience stores are done in convenience stores. 6% of the robberies in the U.S. Homicide rates in convenience stores are only second to taxi cab drivers. Now, the other thing they talk about is watching for escape routes. Typically, they will go into dark areas. And the dark area in that area right now is the subdivision. And you could see where people trying to escape are coming through the subdivision, causing additional harm to the people in that subdivision, which is us. Next, if they're running, if they do a robbery and run, if that should happen, they're most likely going to run towards the park to get into an area where it's harder to find them. So for me, that's another major issue. We talked about benzene already, but one of the amazing things on the test that I saw on pollutants is they're all very consistent. And most of the tests were done to within 328 feet, saying that the benzene levels were too high. And, you know, it hasn't really been talked about much, but benzene, again, the world, I think it's worth addressing. Benzene is a very strong polluter. And the fact of the matter is, if I can find my note on it, I apologize.
gas stations, of course, are a major polluter of benzene. And benzene causes effects of cancer, anemia, increased susceptibility to infections, low birth rates, and as said previously, the World Health Organization said there are no safe levels for benzene. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Hi, my name is Scott Rowinski, West 190, South 8151, Merker Drive. It's TNS Machining. I'm the property right next door. I've been there for 36 years. That dates back to when everybody that's behind me wasn't even in that area because it was cornfield. And it became an industrial park a long time ago. And the gentleman that bought that property was kind enough to buy it from a detective that owned it for many years. And he stuck a lot of money into buying that property. He was nice enough to put that building up that's on it. That was the Journal Sentinel building thing. And I'm shaking a little bit because, you know, it's just something that I've been there for a long time. And I feel for him as a business owner. He's been shot down once already on the value of that property because it was rezoned by everybody that's behind him. And I almost bought that property from him, and I'm glad I didn't, because I'd be in the shoes that he's in now, and I feel for him greatly. It sounds like Casey's not going in there, but what I'm hearing in the background, I wasn't here for the first meeting, but I am here now. I'm hearing a lot of negative stuff. I think this meeting should actually turn on a dime to what everybody behind me is going to do for him and what they're going to allow him to do with that property. You know, you put that kind of money into property and it's grass, and it used to be really bad before he was kind enough to develop it to the point that he did. Okay, this should turn, because like I say again, it doesn't sound like Casey's is going in there because of the benzene and everything else, but we got to help this guy out with his devalued property that was zoned commercial, industrial, like me. Machine shop right next door to him. 36 years I've been in that industrial park paying taxes, so everybody can sit here and look at me. Okay, we got to do something to help that guy out, to put something on that property, because it's good for everybody in this room for somebody to be paying taxes on that property. It's good for the city. If you look at the building that went up right across the street to him, kitty corner to me, that's Institutional Products. He probably spent somewhere between $2 and $4 million to put that building up. Okay, that helps me, makes my building worth more. We need to continue that and allow him to do something on that property. Okay, so it sounds like we're done talking about Casey's. What are we going to do for him to put something on that property? That's what the next thing is that's got to happen here. Okay?
We don't answer questions right now, so
Right.
thank you.
I'm just saying, I'm trying to make a point that I'm not hearing anybody make. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the Plan Commission, and also good evening to the, I want to thank the spirited neighbors from Highland Ridge and Lake Forest Park for attending this meeting. I recognize quite a few of them from 11 years back. My name is Tim Keene. I reside in Green Bay, Wisconsin. My father, Jim, is my partner on the project. He is from Jefferson, Wisconsin. I'm a commercial developer, and I own Mexican restaurants in the Green Bay market. My 79-year-old father is a handyman. That's one of the reasons that we came to Muskego 11 years ago was because my dad developed a hell of a relationship with the Journal Sentinel and had gone around in small communities like this for about 15 years building small Journal Sentinel distribution centers. He built about 15 of them. So when we bought the 2.92 acre parcel, we purchased that property from Mr. Tim Esser, who long served the community for 25 years as a police officer. The one thing I want everybody to notice is when we bought the property, we based it on the location of it was located in an industrial park, it was zoned M2, which we knew the building type of building that we would build would definitely meet those type of standards. We always go well beyond the type of buildings that are required. And with the berm across the street, which I knew was a residential neighborhood, I thought that berm was a beautiful building and it was a great buffer and something that, you know, whatever type of business would be accommodated by what we build and by the berm. When we purchased the property because of the high traffic counts on Janesville Road and Mercury Drive. There are very high traffic counts, I believe to the tune of almost 7,000 to 8,000. I don't have that in front of me, but something in my records tell me that was about that. The industrial park has been around since 1970. And it was zoned M2 from 1970 until when we agreed to rezone it in 2007. In the fall of 2007, we met with the City of Muskego planning expert, which at that time was led by Jeff Minkle, and Adam was also assisted on it. Both of those gentlemen, which are the experts for the City of Muskego, they endorsed our original Journal Sentinel project under the current zoning of M2, which is why we purchased the property. Despite your own City of Muskego planning experts, the City of Muskego Plan Commission ruled against our project and building under the existing M2. That was done in November of 2007. Adam shared with me in an email, I'm sorry to say the Plan Commission denied the request for the Keene project. We at staff level were surprised that this was denied. Adam also added that the Plan Commission neighbors thought of a business with more traditional hours of operation would be more appropriate. They stated uses like retail, which obviously Casey's falls within, and or office. Then we acted, I just want to say how, as a developer, we really concentrated on acting in the best interest of the neighbors. I want to remind you that as developers and property owners, we all have purchased a bundle of rights that at first were under the M2, and now when we agreed to it, we have those purchase of rights. So I too, have a property owner, have my rights as well as the people behind us. So I wanted to say that the M2 zoning was the permitted uses in that M2. I'm not sure if everybody understands what was permitted and not permitted, but underneath the zoning laws, it was permitted for manufacture, assembly, fabrication, processing plants, automobile body shop, transportation terminals, including trucking and general warehousing. Permitted uses by the conditional use grant also included junk or salvage yards, rendering plants, adult-oriented entertainment. We reached out to the Highland Park neighborhood and then received a demand letter from who was a former alderman named Rich Pawlowski, who stated in writing his list of demands. And he basically had a list of demands that included 7 items. His main demand was that we had to rezone it from M2, which is General Industrial District, to B2, Local Service Center District. That's obviously 3 notches higher than where we were at. So we improved it by 3 cycles. Other demands that were included for Mr. Pawlowski included aesthetically pleasing building demands that included all concrete and masonry block. Essentially, in the email, he said that we should design it like the dental clinic down the road, and also had other demands as far as landscaping, lighting demands. In conclusion, we came to an agreement on these items. I believe that we as neighbors will not object to this proposal, is how Mr. Pawlowski ended. Thank you for your time and consideration. Best regards, Rick Pafalski. In March of 2008, that's when we voluntarily agreed to rezone our commercial property based on the neighbor's demands. I entered into language in the March of 2008. This is what I read at the city council meeting. But if we agree to accept the proposed B2 zoning for the commercial property, but accept it under its current language with no restrictive deed language, added that we would further reduce our permitted uses and potential tenants, such as professional use of any kind, bank, convenience stores, other entertainment facilities. We also agreed to, this is what we agreed to back then, those additional costs were to the tune of $300,000. I paid for those changes. I essentially paid for the changes for the certainty moving forward on that property. That property has also cost us $3,000 a month in lost value, or not lost value, but money that my dad and I have to feed that every month. We have to pull out money from the rent, an additional $3,000. So no good deed should go unnoticed. The current submitted use by the Casey's General Store, which clearly contemplated the permitted use in 2007 in our B2 local service district, and nothing has changed since then. So when we had we had a meeting with the neighborhood on January 18th. Some of the main issues were property values. And I looked up different property values right here in Zillow. And to recap, the property values in the city of Muskego have gone up 2.9% in 2017 and projected 2.1% in 18, and over the past 5 years are up almost 15%. While my commercial property was assessed in 2012 was assessed at $738,700. In the past 5 years, my property value has gone down almost 6%, $41,000. So when we talk about property values, please keep in mind the hardship that we've undertaken for this. In conclusion, I am out over $660,000 in almost 11 years. And now the neighbors want my property value to go to zero. So being a good neighbor should cost me $1 million, while the Highland Park neighborhoods have gone up 15%. Is that fair? Increased traffic. The location is in front of an industrial park, and it's on a busy highway. That's how we purchased the property. We didn't change that. Those things were there. That's why we purchased it. Obviously, a county road has high traffic counts. And again, once again, the business park has been there since 1970. Some of the comments at the meeting, and again, it was from a couple of the comments were from Mr. Pafalski, who I had agreement with and abided by all his rules in 2007. We are not against the Casey's project. We want you to locate it somewhere else in the city, but not there. And if you think we got a lot of people at this meeting, just wait. So my take is that I understand that he's a president of the school board, and I would think that's kind of a bullying tactic to kind of go out and say you have no options to your property. The negative tax consequences for the city of Muskego and for the school district of Muskego, you're looking at a projected value of about $2 million. So you're looking at about $35,000 a year in annual taxes for just one project. I thank you for your time and consideration, and I hope you make a good decision.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Is there anyone else? You spoke. Is there anyone else who has not spoke yet that wants to come up?
What a great introduction.
Good evening. My name is Rick Petfalski, and I reside at W194 South 8184 Highland Park Drive. I'm here tonight to ask the Commission to deny the request for the conditional use permit for a gas station and convenience store at this location. I'll be honest, this is a textbook NIMBY request. It's not in my backyard. I'm not against this site being developed, and I don't think most people here are. What we are against is this type of development in this type of area. The business and development to the west of this site is what's appropriate for that location. Something that does not draw hundreds of cars, disrupt our yards with light and noise pollution at all hours of the night. There's a reason our code requires a conditional use for this type of zoning. It's not an appropriate place for a gas station across the street from single-family housing. I can't think of any place in our city where a gas station has been allowed to be put in place across from single-family homes. I also know that the recent change in state statutes require any conditional requests that the requests for any accommodations are reasonable and measurable. So even if the whole community were to come out against this development, that would not be reason enough for you to deny the petitioner's request. So let me assist you in that. Our city ordinances control the amount of light that a development may produce and how much light is allowed to escape the development from its own building lighting. However, this type of use will draw hundreds of vehicles a day coming and going. Typical automobile headlights produce 1,200 to 1,500 lumens, and new cars with LED headlights are producing over 4,000 lumens. The amount of light generated by vehicles coming and going would be enough to light a small city. If you look at that site, the site plan, the gas stalls are facing north and south, directly facing the residential homes across the street. The plan calls for vegetative screening, but as is evident to all the homeowners on Highland Park Drive, no number of bushes or trees will block the light from coming into our yards, from the customers coming and going that site. In addition, the western egress of the site will require vehicles to shine their lights directly on a number of homes as they are leaving the site. If it ever warms up, we would like to actually be able to enjoy our backyards without headlights shining through our bushes and into our yards. Sound pollution. The starting of vehicles at the site will increase noise pollution to the neighborhood dramatically. Vehicles produce considerable more noise when accelerating to speed than when they are driving by at 35 miles an hour. Depending on the vehicle, the noise produced when accelerated from a dead stop can range from 65 to 85 decibels. As a point of comparison, noise becomes annoyingly loud to many people in the upper 70 decibel range. Add this to the noise from car doors slamming shut, outside conversation, and it's clearly going to have an impact on neighbors trying to enjoy the use of their backyard. Traffic controls. I know the road falls under the jurisdiction of Waukesha County, and they currently have no plans for traffic controls at this corner. There will be a time in the near future, if this site is as successful as the developers are hoping, that they're going to have to do some kind of controls for that intersection. Adding a light to the corner of Mercury, Ancient Oaks, and Janesville will cause Highland Park to become a shortcut for all traffic coming and going from the Lake Fort subdivision, further eroding the quality of life for those residents. Crime. Gas stations get robbed. It's a sad fact, and they get robbed more in this community than any other type of business. It wasn't that long ago at the mobile gas station, when the gas station was robbed, that there was a high school-age student in the store at the time. He was lucky to escape unharmed, but it could have gone a different direction very easily. Criminals often escape on foot into nearby neighborhoods. I don't want our neighborhood to become the next scene of Cops Live. The reality is a gas station is not appropriate at this location. I had hoped that when Casey's had their neighborhood meeting a few months ago, a few months back, they would have taken into consideration the 40 or so people that showed up to tell them welcome to Muskego, but not here. Since that meeting, they have made no efforts to reach out to any of us and work through any of our concerns. I respectfully request that the CUG be denied based on the substantial evidence I have cited and others have. Please do not set the precedent of allowing a gas station across from single-family housing in Muskego, as there are none now. If the Commission still feels this is appropriate to allow this development to move forward, I would request the following conditions at least be met on the site. Redesign the layout to have the gas stalls facing east and west. This will limit shining light onto the residential properties and assist in lowering the direct path of sound from tailpipes and sound bouncing directly off the main structure to the homes to the north. Limit the hours of operation to 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. Limit deliveries to the hours of 7 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. Monday through Friday and 9 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. Saturdays and Sundays and holidays. Allow no temporary signs, banners, or flags on the site on the Janesville side of the road. And no sale of diesel fuel, because this will limit the amount of trucks and noisy vehicles coming and going from the site. Thank you for your service, and I hope you guys make the right decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay, with that, we're going to close this public hearing, and we're going to roll into the next public hearing.
Public hearing for conditional use grant in accordance with the Muskego zoning ordinance for Casey's General Store for the purpose of allowing a gas station on the property located on Janesville Road and College Avenue.
Thank you, Mayor. As was stated with the other one, it's also for Casey's gas station convenience store. Difference here is location. This is still located on Janesville Road. It's just further east. It's actually on the city's eastern border on the corner of College Avenue and Janesville Road. It's where the former Lincoln State Bank, and I believe it was a BMO for a little bit, is basically just east of the center where Anita's Dance Studio and Lake Point Church are. So with this plan, they'd be demoing that building and using that existing site with existing access points.
Thank you. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak at this public hearing?
Hi, I'm Julie Kowalski. I live at S66W12775 Somerset Drive. I'm in the subdivision that's just south of that location. I would like you to oppose this Casey's General Store for all the reasons that were just spoken on the other public hearing, and also for the fact that Muskego does not need any additional gas stations. We already have some. There's a vacant one just down the street from this location. It's been sitting there for all 3 years that I've been here. And if nobody wants to be in that gas station, what makes this one sustainable? Living right there, my kids go to school right there at St. Paul's. Every time I drive by after work to go get my kids from school, all the cars are driving right by. There's a gas station just east on Janesville Road in Hales Corners. That gas station is totally empty all the time. You never have to wait for a gas pump. I have no reason to believe that we need another gas station in between Jets and the one that's in Hales Corners, because neither one of those are ever full, I guess. So please oppose this one as well.
Thank you. Is there anyone else for this hearing? Okay, then we will, you have something?
I would just like to ask everyone how many people approve of that gas station at Janesville Road.
You have to stick to the college one.
Right at our.
You have to stick to the college one because we're off the other one.
Okay.
Thank you. I knew where you were going. Okay. So no one else for the Janesville and College? Okay, with that, then this hearing is also closed. Takes us to old business for possible reconsideration. Reconsideration. Resolution PC 13, 2018, approval of an annual review for R.D. Meyer Mini Storage property located on Test Corners Drive. Do we need to bring this to the floor? I don't know.
It was deferred.
Yeah. Deferred, so it's on the table. Okay.
Get my notes here.
It's on the floor right now. We don't need to bring it to the floor.
All right, thank you, Mayor. This item was in front of us under our last meeting. The reason it was here was part of an annual review that is required for certain properties in the city. Most, if not all, mini storage uses in the city have an annual review as part of their approval to make sure that they're keeping in line with all of their site approvals. In the case of this property, when we did our inspections, we realized that two things. Number one, that they didn't have occupancy for use of the building. And part of that reason was based upon number two, that they did some things to the outside of the buildings and on the site that weren't following the approved plans by the city. So we reached out to the owner, and between some back and forth with us talking to the owner talking to us, the owner decided to submit an amendment that was included in your packet. So he's submitting a building site and operation plan amendment, basically. So he's seeking to amend his site approvals to allow the items that are out there, or he gives a few options of what items he's looking at. So the three items, and these are items that were submitted in the letter per the applicant. The three items that really came up, the first one was relating to the roof color. The roof color that was built on the three newest buildings had striped roofs, where the bulk of the other buildings are either a white, a light gray, or there's one flat roof, which is black, as most flat rubber membrane roofs are. So the applicant, as part of his proposal, suggests either leaving the roof as is. He suggests painting the larger 80 by 168 foot building striped to match the existing striped roofs on the three newer buildings, or painting white over the red and blue on the new building. Staff response to that was based upon the city's boards and committees adopting design guides and general aesthetic regulations to ensure orderly and pleasing development in the city. Color details were not provided to the city at the building permit time, as they were required by the Plan Commission resolution that approved these three newer buildings. Also, since the other approved roofs were already approved as gray or white, city assumed that all new roofs would match on site, since matching was brought up as a concern overall on the site as a part of their development process approvals. There have been no recent Plan Commission approved buildings with striped roofs. Based upon this information, staff is recommending that the roofs be altered or replaced or painted, depending on how the applicant wants to proceed, to match the gray or white roofs that have been approved on all other buildings on the site. We want to keep consistency through the site typically. It is important to note that given the roof pitch, the building size, and location, these roofs are visible from test corners and surrounding sites. So that's kind of item number one. Item two was relating to the fencing, the fence slatting that was put in the front fencing. The applicant suggests leaving the fence slatting as is, or removing the red slats and increasing the width of the blue and the white slats, in addition to adding 2 or 3 more 5x8 flags in the fencing. Staff's response was fence slatting was never requested by the owner in any approvals for this site. All slatting typically needs city approvals from the Plan Commission. Fence slats have not typically been approved by the Plan Commission on sites where the fencing is in areas near roadways or on fronts of lots, and normally we wouldn't approve slatting that wouldn't match a building. The industrial park properties where we have approved slatting have typically matched building colors or other complemented colors on site. Most of approved slats have been limited to gates also. When there's solid type fencing, the Plan Commission typically wants it to be some material other than just slatting, as the slatting doesn't really screen the best. There are better types of screening available when you're fronting a road. Based upon this, staff is recommending that either the slatting be completely removed or they be replaced with non-striped slats, one consistent color that match the main colors of the walls of the building. Staff does not have a problem with the existing U.S. flag that is currently woven into the fence gate, as this flag is a nice feature within the gate. And the last item is bollard color. The applicant suggests leaving either bollard colors yellow or that the city purchase bollard covered sleeves for him to cover the existing yellow bollards. And staff response is that the Plan Commission resolution from their approval that approved these three buildings specifically called out that they needed to match the building color of the bollards, as well as their building permit. One of the conditions of the building permit specifically stated it needed to match building color. Any yellow bollards that were placed on this property were placed at the owner's free will and did not receive city approval in the past. Based upon this information, staff recommends that the bollards that were installed around the newer fence and the newer buildings be colored to match the main building. Any bollards that are older and further back on site, even if they weren't approved, could remain since they're not very visible. So the way that the resolution is stated, the resolution just lists the facts of what the owner was asking for and what city is suggesting. The Planning Commission will need to make amendments to this to basically impose whatever conditions. If the Planning Commission is good with what the applicant wants, we'll need to choose what those are, because the applicant gave a few different options. If the Planning Commission likes what the city's saying, they can amend that. But whatever happens, whatever the outcome is that the Planning Commission wants to do here, they're going to have to amend the resolution to reflect that and to be it further resolved. So we basically need anywhere from 1 to 3 amendments for how we're going to handle the bollards, the fencing, and the roofing.
Okay, so it's on the floor for discussion.
Excuse me.
You can. Sure, absolutely.
I'm not trying to be difficult. But here's a bunch of pictures. I got 7 copies, so take one and pass it down, and wherever we need to share, go ahead and do your thing, Sharon. I'd like to go through a little bit of this property history and what kind of things have happened through the years. I've owned this property 25 years, and I ran a very successful food manufacturing business out of there for many of those years. I converted to storage back in 2006 and built the units in back. All through the construction things I've done, there has never been a discussion of roof color. Adam says he asked for color something or other, but I never ever heard that, or he's never asked me that. The only thing that's ever been discussed is the sidewalls of the property, which my original property was gray steel with blue bottom brick. And in 2011, the city had a beautification of the Test Corners Industrial Park project, where they would match up to half of $6,000 towards renovation of property. Well, I went ahead and put $15,000 into my property, put in a nice, and it was all city approved and codes and everything, a nice brick vinyl wainscot around my building, and enhanced the curb appeal of my property. Back, and I put 5 roofs on these buildings, all different permits and stuff, and they're different colors. There's white and galvanized, and there's a black rubber roof, and it never dawned on me that there was never a discussion about the colors of all these roofs that I put on. And so I didn't even realize there was a code on colors of roofs. You know, the only the only point that Adam and Jeff and prior people have ever made is the curb view of the property, which is the sidewalls and the brick. So you can see how I thought I was having some fun with my last project, and I thought I'm going to make, and my whole property's been a red, white, and blue theme based on patriotism and American flag. I got flags out front blowing, and I thought, well, this would be kind of cool to have a red, white, and blue roof. Anyway, so that's how it all happened. Never once during this time has I've ever been told there's a roof color code. I've utilized architects to make sure my projects are state approved. I worked with Adam and Jeff. I worked with Phil Dibbs, a fire department zoning man, and I mean, obviously Phil wouldn't care about roofs, but neither the architects, the state, or the planning department has ever mentioned that there was some kind of code for roofs. Until recently, after I put up these buildings, I found out that there is. And you know, it's like I'm on double secret probation or something, like an Animal House movie. You know, it's been anyway. So the buildings are done. They're structurally finished, and I just don't know. I'm not sure how to deal with this. I thought the red, white, and blue would be kind of neat for people from the air, helicopters, airplanes, stuff like that. You very rarely can see it. You know, the only place you can actually see the roof is when you're out on Test Corners Drive, which is about 4 or 5 feet higher than my property.
Anyway, this is a local issue, and I'd like to deal with each of the little issues which are part of this. And this is where those little pictures come in play. My property's been there since 1969. It was built as a trucking company. There were 20 yellow bollards around that property when I bought it in 1993. I have never removed all of them. I've removed and moved some. And you see in the pictures there marked bollards that you got there. I've had them on there since 1969 to 93 when I bought it. I took out a few in 1993 when I renovated it into the food processing plant. And there were still 10 of them protecting overhead doors in various places around the property. When I built the initial storage place in back, I put in yellow bollards back there too. Nothing was mentioned that I should be putting in blue ones or white ones or some other color. You know, it kind of makes my head explode. Anyway, in 2014, I was anticipating building these 3 buildings in front. So I enhanced the parking area for my daycare that I don't own it, but Leap Daycare is in front. I added more parking spaces for them, all under permit. I moved the gate up front, and we put yellow bollards around that. Okay, I'm not sure what's going on. Anyway, so then I started the permit process for the 3 buildings in the parking lot. I mean, it was an old crappy parking lot, all full of potholes. I thought, I got to improve this. So after I built the buildings, I added 6 more bollards to protect the buildings against traffic and trucks going in and out of there. Now, this seems to be the simplest of the 3 issues, because I've had yellow bollards, and this property's had them since 1969 for 50 years. So I understand brand new construction, like my neighbor down the street, Test Corners Automotive. He's got brown bollards that match his building. But doesn't the grandfathered in established property have any drive on what's going on a property when you're adding? I just added 3 little buildings, 2,500 foot each. Yet I got almost 40,000 square feet of buildings under roof. And yellow bollards are an issue. Anyway, you'll see pictures there, and I got lists of properties all over Muskego with yellow bollards. The Test Corners Fire Department right down the street has got them. I mean, I don't know what, I couldn't even believe that was on the letter. So anyway, that's kind of it on yellow bollards. I don't know how you want to deal with all this, if you want to deal with them one at a time or individually. I think the yellow bollards is the easiest thing to deal with. Just leave them the way they are. The most common color in bollards is red and yellow. Recently, apparently there's been some code changes, and on new construction you make the bollards match the building. Well, this isn't exactly new construction. 3 little buildings are. But even when I built the buildings in back, there was no yellow bollard change or mention or anything. You know, I think there's some kind of a, I've been here for a long time, issue going on that these shouldn't be a problem. Anyway, enough said about yellow bollards. The fence privacy slats. There's a group of pictures marked master, and that's due to my great neighbor next door. You like privacy fencing. So when I first got into buying this property in 1993, I met E.J. Salentine. Never met him in my life. I talked to him for a couple hours and told him what I wanted to do with the property next door, that I wanted to be a food manufacturer and I would clean up the property. He reached over his desk and says, "Welcome to Muskego. It'll be nice having that S-hole cleaned up next door." And I've done that through the years. And Adam knows this, and I think Kathy does too. I mean, if you haven't driven out that way, it's one of the nicest properties in the Test Corners Industrial Park. It's the only one that's weeded. You know, my next door neighbor, you got pictures of his beautiful white fence there in front of you. He's got a weed bed in front, right on Test Corners Drive. And on the north side of my property, all the fencing is fallen down from disrepair and no maintenance. And this is what I got on the north side and the south side of my property. And I'm the bad guy here. I decided because of the weeds along his white fence, which, you know, this place looks like a prison now. Should have guard towers on the corners, you know. But all along his white fence is solid weeds on both sides. So I try to mow as close to the fence as I can to keep the weeds off. But I actually sprayed his weeds for the last couple years, and then I put in 10 great nice arborvitaes in there to cover up his fence because it's so ugly. You know, you want that kind of fencing? I thought I would put in the privacy fencing, and I thought in continuation of my red, white, and blue patriotic theme of my property with the flag and the pole and the flag and the fence, I would put red, white, and blue striped on the fence. It looks nice. I've had nothing but compliments on my property of people driving in, people call my phone number and say, "Hey, I love your look at your fence," and stuff. They actually do that stuff. I think it has something to do with my reader board out front. But anyway, they have fun with that too. I don't take this stuff real seriously, you know. None of us are, you know, life's too short. None of us get out alive. But I like this property, and it's been my retirement project for the last few years. And if I had thought there was any kind of issue with what was on my roof, I would never have put the red, white, and blue on. But it's on there now. And it's a beautiful steel roof, nice colors, the colors of our country. And the whole property looks good in the industrial park. It looks better. You know, there's only a handful of properties that look good in this industrial park. I didn't even know it was an industrial park until 2010, and now it's a historical industrial park. Well, it'd be nice if you all tell us. But anyway, you got Olson's, which really has a nice property. You got the bus company up the street's really nice. My property's nice. You know, the ones on the east end, the shopping center, they're well kept. The buildings over by Bushy's on College Avenue are well kept. But I would think that the fact that I've kept this property up for 25 years would provide a little flexibility on these kind of, and I'm sorry, this nitpicky little codes things. I didn't realize they were there, and the bollard thing is ridiculous because I've had yellow bollards forever. The striping, I don't have a problem. You know, I think a blue and white stripe would look good. If you look on some of those other pictures, on the one's called Master, there's striping next door on their fence and it's clearly visible from the from the street of Test Corners Drive. That's where you see all the fencing that's all got damaged from the dumpsters, and they got beautiful wooden covering on the fencing, which is really ugly too. And you know, my place looks good, you know. Even with the red, white, and blue stripes, it doesn't look like a clown circus like Adam commented to me. It looks like a patriotic red, white, and blue company, which I am. I got a safe out in front of my property on display. It's an old antique safe owned by the Ballestery crime family, I was told. Never had it open. I have it decorated. It's got "In God We Trust." You know, I got all kinds of little antiques out there that make the property nicer looking. The daycare is doing well. You know, there's no reason for me to even be here other than trying, you know, these codes. So I've kept a good property. What else? I've gone through the north property and the south. They're good neighbors. The ones on the north are good, and the ones on, you know, they're all good neighbors. They're good businessmen. They just attention to landscape detail isn't there, you know, which I do. You don't find any weeds around mine. Adam tells me that slats are not okay. Well, they put them in next door 2 years ago or so. Then there's slats on the north side, which are older. He says they don't hold up. Well, the only thing looking on that north side fence that looks good are the slats. All the weeds and all the brush and all the damage from the dumpsters hitting the fence has got them all falling down. The slats are still there and they still look good. So I'm not sure I agree with that comment that you don't allow slats, because you did allow slats at Storage Masters next door. And there's a picture of his fence in there, and it's already starting to fall down. There's a wire fence on our common property line, that's weaved like this. It's ridiculous after only 2 years that fence is that bad. It's because of lack of maintenance. You won't see that on any of my fences because I take care of them. Anyway, roof colors, I don't know what I can say about that other than I'm sorry I put them up, but they're up. And to replace the roof would be an economic hardship I would not do. To paint the roof, it's a perfectly good roof. And it doesn't, I have not had one person ever notice the roof other than whoever did the review. Nobody has ever noticed my roof. So I'm not sure the issue of painting the roof. I mean, it just, I'm sure there's some give or take on that we could do. But as far as the fence, I almost think that a white and a blue fence would be nice looking. I prefer to just leave it as it is, red, white, and blue. But if you really don't want the colors, patriotic striping colors there, my buildings are blue and white, and a blue and white fence would probably look okay along with the flags. So anyway, I know you guys are probably half asleep after all these public hearings, and now you have to listen to me. So anyway, I don't know. There's a whole bunch of pictures there in the main group that I show pictures of my property and how nice it looks. And I mean, there's from the front, the daycare, the playground, the trees, the shrubbery, the flower gardens that my wife and I have taken care of for decades. The gate, the 10 big arborvitae trees that I put in next on my south lot line. It cost me about $3,000 to put that in, to cover up that god-awful looking white fence. And you guys approved that. None of the neighbors like it. They all think my fence is great. I've talked to both neighbors across the street. I mean, it's not like we have a big residential neighborhood here. So, but anyway, I put the American flag in the gate first, and I had people commenting constantly. So that's why I went ahead and I ordered the slats, and I thought, this will be cool. Just put a privacy fence in. City ought to like a privacy fence. They want everything behind fences. So I thought, okay, I'm doing a good thing. I'm wrong there too. So anyway, I don't know what else. I don't want to talk you to death. I've already done that. So you'll see on that main group of pictures, I also, according to the theme of my thing, I put a big 13 by 20 foot American flag on top of my big building too. You'll notice that. There's a pictures of that. So, it's not like this has been just a whim thing. This has been as a color, my blue and white, and then adding the red, white, and blue theme to it has been a focus of my attention for the last few years. So I put the roof on the big building in 2012, and the flag was on there shortly thereafter. And then I thought with the new buildings, I would put the red, white, and blue striping and accent the property that way. So a lot of confusion on that corner. Everybody thought I was developing Storage Masters, and then they wondered if he bought me out. And I tell my customers, which I get a lot of customers, actually people that look at his, but a lot of customers come to my place, and I tell them it's the one with the red, white, and blue fence. Because they get confused. I've had his customers come in to my place looking for his place, and my customers have gotten confused going there. And it's not a fun thing to have two of the same businesses right next door to each other. Kind of like gas stations being a block apart. So anyway, it makes it a little more difficult. But I've competed. I was a major competitor in a good business for many years, and I'll always be, and I still will be. So whatever you folks decide. Any questions? Anybody here?
Can I get this thing going here, Kit? What if now Adam just manages the code. So he's Adam and our planning staff, they manage the code, right? So they really
right. I understand his job. I don't have a problem with it.
So with that said, would it be possible to just get rid of the red on the fence, color your ballard blue and leave the flag on the roof.
Well, the ballards are all plastic coated. They're plastic big covers.
I'm just trying to give you some consistency here, blue, white, and leave the flag on the roof. I mean, would that meet, or?
That's strictly your decision. It's based upon what the
I'm not looking.
the test corners is not
I mean, I've flown over there. Coast Guard seems to like your roof. They use it as a checkpoint.
Have you flown over it?
Yeah.
You saw it?
Yeah.
I did too. It's the coolest thing.
I can't say it bothers me, but in the interest of being uniform, and we have to apply the code, right? I mean, they are annoying, but.
Well, my property's been here for 50 years, though. I remember at one of these meetings years ago, Nancy Salentine commented, "Well, it should be blue, should be brown." Well, my property's been red or white and blue for 50 years.
Can you make the fence just blue and white?
Sure.
And then
I could do
color
that.
the ballard blue.
So I got to buy all new ballard covers.
Well,
can't you paint them?
Yeah. Can you just spray it or what?
They're plastic vinyl. Paint's not going to stick on
What's
those
it?
things.
I mean, I'm just trying to give you some.
Yeah, I understand what
you're
you're.
because I like your flag. I'm fine with it.
So if I make my fence blue and white, replace all the plastic ballards with blue ones, which I
is what?
I don't know.
oh, there's a bunch.
I mean, I'm only suggesting
Just the ones up front. Just the ones towards the street.
Just the ones on the
street.
Or it's those two are.
Well, there's 3 up with a front gate, and there's one by the corner of the front building, and then the rest are all. But I
count 4. That's what
well, there's a
Adam, can you tell us which ones are?
Well, yeah, I mean, our suggestion was anything by the front gate and anything by the new buildings, because that release requirement only applied to those 3 buildings and anything by the gate. I mean,
There's 6
what's visible from the road? The ones that are way back? No.
There's 9 bollards we're talking
I
about.
counted 4, I thought, but maybe there's 6.
Each building has 2, right?
Right. Each 2 has 2 on the
It's for the new buildings.
Okay,
Yep. So there's
and
6,
one-
and then there's 3 up front by the gate. I think there's 3.
Okay.
So 9 bollards.
Well, save your flag and
Red, a blue and white fence.
I mean, can't you use the existing. Just remove the red.
Yeah, that's not a big deal. I just thought red, white, and blue was cool because of the.
I mean, your real cost is those ballards, but it also keeps you within our code, and it's consistent with what we apply to everybody.
I understand that, and that the bollard thing I don't have a problem with, and I'll buy 9 more blue ones. They sell them. I think they sell blue or yellow were the most common, or red. Red and yellow were the most common colors years ago. And I think you can get blue. Apparently you can get anything, because are the brown ones available these days too?
Any color. There's a lot
Okay,
of
so they didn't used to be when I was buying bollards.
I'm just trying to keep this moving, because the longer we talk about it, it's probably not.
Okay, so we got the bollards figured out.
I don't think anybody is questioning your patriotism.
Well, thank
and
you.
I thank
We
you
all
for it.
pledged allegiance.
And I kind of dig it, right? But there's a struggle with asking for forgiveness and not permission with some things.
Yeah, but you gotta know you gotta ask for permission.
That's what I'm saying. That's kind of the point I'm making. You're proving my point, actually. But you had a little history of kind of going along and doing some things and saying, after the fact, I didn't know, when
It's just a sole project. I've always followed the codes through every project I've had in 25 years.
And again, is Chris
That's never been an issue.
Adam's just trying to enforce the code.
I understand Adam's
And
job.
so, I don't think anybody's questioning. You
mad at
kind of
him.
said,
Don't get me wrong.
I was wrong there. I don't think you're wrong. It just it doesn't fit in with the code. And so we're just trying to, because Pandora's box is you cracked open a little bit. We're trying to.
Well, I had a brain thought the other day, which is dangerous. And I wonder, what if, you see that one, there's a picture in there of the property from the road. You can see the red and yellow, red, white, and not yellow, but red, white, and blue stripes on the front building. I don't know if you find that. It's in the it's in the last one called Maine, I think.
Mayor, I'm going to make a motion to amend.
Okay.
Replace the bollards visible from the street to blue. Make the fence blue and white, and keep the flag.
And the rooftop stays?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's the same.
Rooftop stays.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion on that amendment?
No, I mean, that's agreeable.
Fine with me.
And again, just the ones.
I want to paint my roof. It's a great roof.
It is a great roof. You're right.
I'm sorry. If I had any inkling I was doing wrong, I would have kind of asked.
You know what? And I trust you that you did not willingly.
No, I had no clue it was wrong to put a red, white, blue roof on a building. You see them online all the time, buildings with red, white, and blue roofs on them, with the flags on there and everything. So anyway, change the fence and change.
We have to vote.
Oh, okay.
You want to give us that opportunity? No.
Sure.
Okay, please cast your vote on the amendment. Amendment is approved unanimously. So I assume there's no other discussion. So now you will be voting on the resolution as amended. It is also approved unanimously.
Thank you.
So
Thank you,
Adam will
Mayor.
be in touch.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, board members. Appreciate it. So.
Okay, consent business.
Resolution PC 26, 2018, approval of the sale of plants and flowers for Andrew Warner, AW Greenhouses, near Preferred Fitness, located on Janesville Road.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, please cast your vote. Oops, I don't, wait, okay. Now cast your vote. Approved unanimously. Okay, new business for consideration. Resolution PC 23, 2018, approval of a conditional use grant, building site and operation plan, a 3-lot certified survey map for Casey's General Store, located on Janesville and Mercury Drive. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Need a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay, Adam, I know you have a few things
All right,
to-
thanks, Mayor. I'll just try to keep it short. Obviously, there's a lot of comments that came out already. I'll try to hit on a few of them that are, and some we're going to cover already. Biggest thing, like was talked about, part of this approval is a 3-lot certified survey map. 1 lot would be for the existing building on site. 1 lot would be for the existing new user. 1 lot would be for the existing stormwater pond, which would be shared by both users on site. To kind of clarify, building size is about 4,600, 4,700 square feet. They're proposing a total of 6 multi-product fuel dispensers, which is a total of 12 fueling stations. The outermost 2 would have the ability for diesel. The applicants have stated they do not. Agree and admit that there is not maneuverability for large trucks, and it's not a fast flow pump, so they would expect that any diesel users would be for automobile diesel or maybe smaller vehicles, but they agree that the site doesn't really facilitate large truck movement, and the pumps aren't the kind that you find at Johnny's that are servicing high-speed pumps. As was mentioned, the property used to be zoned M2, which was general industrial. 2008, the property owner did willingly change the property, working with the neighbors to B2. And in the B2 district, the use is allowed potentially with a conditional use grant. Hours have been stated to us as no earlier than 5 a.m. opening and no later than midnight closing. There was some range in there, but that was the earliest and the latest. Due to potential noise concerns, one of the things that's in the resolution already states that currently the resolution states that no delivery of fuel products, including garbage pickup or anything like that. Snow plowing is usually something the city doesn't regulate, as that's very random and sporadic, and that's kind of when need applies. But any kind of deliveries, including trash pickup or fuel, would be limited to between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. That's how the resolution is currently listed. Businesses shown having 15 to 20 employees, with 10 of those being full-time. As far as general site building architecture, the building's proposed to be clad with all brick on all 4 elevations. There are 2 soldier courses of brick that kind of help enhance the facade design, reddish and rustic brown in color. There are some windows on the building, on the front facade only, and the building is proposed with a hip roof. The original plan that we first saw when we first started talking, which a lot of Casey's and other areas have, is a flat roof, and they've developed this into a hip roof to try to meet some of the design guides in the city. They do have an area at the back of the roof that's kind of notched out of the building that is used to house all the rooftop units for HVAC and refrigeration and stuff, and that is right now proposed with an aluminum screening wall feature. Even though the architecture has some good design elements, there are some changes that staff is suggesting that are identified in the resolution that we think would further enhance the design. So number one, on all elevations, we definitely think there should be more window elements to help further the four-sided architecture goals and to help with some of the design features to help break up some of these flat facades. On the rear roof area, we're suggesting altering the rooftop mechanical area so that the units are either completely screened by the roof itself, and sometimes that's allowable depending on the building layout, or relocating the rooftop units to grade and screening them with fencing and or natural screening. We've had some luck with that in other properties before. As far as the gas station canopy goes, we've heard some basic ideas of what they're thinking, but there haven't been formal plans in their submittal for the gas station canopy. There was some talk, though, about having some like brick and stuff on the columns, and this location they're looking at removing the red that they normally would have on their elevations and replacing it with like a tan color, and the same thing for the canopy. I believe that was talked about, but more details need to be provided. As far as canopy design goes, hip or gable roof feature are recommended to be added to complement the main building. This is something that the most recent gas station that's been approved in the city was Jets, even though it was a little bit ago. That Jets gas station is a good example of what we suggested they look at, as that has a, I think it's a gable roof to kind of match the roof feature on the building, as well as we're suggesting adding some brick or stone support columns with possible caps on top with maybe exposed post above to just give a little more dimension and design to help with the aesthetic. As far as the site goes, they're showing 17 parking stalls. It does include 12 additional stalls in theory by the pumps. One space is needed for every 150 square feet of customer area, which means 17 are required, and that's what they're proposing, not counting the gas stalls. Driveways and parking stall sizes meet the city's minimum requirements. We are suggesting in the resolution a connection to the We Energies trail. The trail is right there, and when properties are adjacent to a trail, we've typically seen connections. And Inpro, who's next door, is a perfect example. They built a pedestrian connection trail from their site to the trail to help pedestrian access. The dumpster enclosures talked about, but details weren't provided, but it is noted as being brick. Resolution states that no outdoor storage of products or displays, so salt, propane, wood, fire, etc., should be allowed. That's something we've typically restricted on other sites of this nature. They are showing landscaping throughout the site. They are showing some stuff in front of the pumps that would screen potential headlights. They also show some landscaping scattered throughout the site. Final landscape review takes place at the building permit time upon any suggestions from the Planning Commission and upon review of our city forester. So if the Planning Commission wanted any additional landscaping, they should be as specific as they can about what they'd like to see. As well as we're suggesting more base plantings around the building, plantings around transformers, plantings around the trash enclosure, and if there are any ground mechanicals or wall-mounted mechanicals. Signage has been proposed. Signage is usually handled more separately with a sign permit, as long as it meets the sign ordinance requirements. As far as size and height and stuff, there's usually not concerns with signage. As far as lighting goes, they have provided a photometric plan that indicates the lighting levels. There will be lights on the building, soffit mounted and pole mounted. The photometric plan shows that some lighting levels will exceed 0.5 foot candles at the lot line, which our code says they should not. So the resolution is written to have the lighting adjusted to meet those requirements. All lighting is required to be full cutoff and 0 degree tilt, meaning pointing straight at the ground. And the maximum pole height cannot exceed either 15 feet or the eave height of the building. They haven't given us details, but that's a requirement in the resolution. A couple other things in the resolution is any bollards, railing, ladders, etc. must be match principal structure color. Handicap signs must be permanently mounted into the ground, and any kind of mechanicals need to be screened. Now, based upon the items that staff was looking for further details on and more clarification on, landscaping, building architecture, canopy design, we are recommending deferral, especially since there were a lot of comments tonight. It's probably good for everyone to kind of digest and see what we think if there are any alterations needed. I know the applicants are looking for any kind of feedback from the Planning Commission, so they can decide what they're going to alter or anything. Now, as far as some of the main comments that at least I can address, and the applicant can maybe clarify more, hours, like I said, they're not sitting 24/7. Now, I know most gas stations are 24/7 for self-service. I think that's kind of a standard. The city has sometimes regulated business hours, sometimes not. We have not said that most businesses cannot be 24/7, but they are not proposing that now. And if Planning Commission does set times, they would be held to those times, and any changes they want to make to that, they would have to come back here. As far as traffic and stuff with access goes, there is access right now proposed on Mercury Drive, lining up with the INPO driveway. And there's also an access that has to be shared with the adjacent user to the west. So the existing construction company that used to be Journal Sentinel, they have to share an access with them. It's a right. I don't think it's a right in. It's a right out only, I believe. And there are Excel, D-cell, and bypass lanes right now. We've reached out to the county, the city engineering staff, and the mayor has reached out to the county regarding, because it is a county highway, for traffic impacts. 2 different staff members of the county have stated, based upon the existing uses, the existing traffic counts, the existing crash records, and their proposed use, the county is not requiring any changes in any form. They don't believe it warrants it based upon the parameters that they use to make their decisions. It is a county highway. They make any calls to any improvements on the physical county roadway. And then as far as lighting levels, I think I addressed that with the photometric plan that has to be adjusted. So staff is recommending deferral, but looking for feedback from Planning Commission.
Okay, yeah, and so I do encourage some discussion here, but I would concur and encourage you to defer with all the things that were raised tonight also, so that there's time to research all that. And I know you also, I got to point that out, you all got the email that Adam sent from our city attorney regarding. Did you want to
do like a little synopsis? So there has been, as of I think it was the end of November of last year, November 27th of 2017, Wisconsin State Legislature decided to change some laws. They're changing these laws in relation to a court case that occurred in Wisconsin in Trempealeau County. And in that court case, basically, it's actually, I think it was the county used some, maybe the best word is subjectivity, kind of in a way to deny a project, which the codes allow them to do. The Energy Corporation that was in this case decided to appeal it, and because of some court rulings, the state legislature came back and basically said, we're going to, for lack of a better term, take away some of the rights of some of the communities to regulate conditional use grants. So conditional use grants now, based upon this state legislature change, basically have a few things. Basically that any decisions made relating to conditional use grants need to be basically tangible or measurable, or things that are substantiated by evidence, as far as here's some quotes from our city attorney. Substantial evidence means facts or information other than merely personal preferences or speculation directly pertaining to the requirements and conditions of the applicant must meet to obtain a conditional use permit, and reasonable persons would accept in support of a conclusion. So basically that if the Planning Commission wants to put conditions on this applicant, on any conditional use grant for that matter, they can. The key is the conditions imposed must be related to the purpose of the ordinance and must be based upon substantial evidence. Also, if the applicant is willing to meet any of the conditions that the Planning Commission believes meets the substantial evidence requirement, the Planning Commission is really required by law. It says shall grant the conditional use grant if all conditions can be met. So like I said, our city attorney has done a bunch of research on this, and based upon these laws, he's in agreement that these laws really tie the city's hands more than they used to, which is something as a city, we're not in favor of. But with those new laws in the conditional use grant, how we look at this conditional use grant is definitely different than how we could have looked at it in the past.
Okay, thank you, Adam.
So to comment on that, just since no one's, so I get what you had just said. Thank you for that summary. And while on the plane and back, I was able to Google and read about 17 other opinions throughout this state. So my challenge is trying to get past this, because so back in 2000, I think the state had passed laws saying that you need to form or create a comprehensive plan that matches your zoning. And so effectively in 2000, Muskego set their own, which was the 2010 comprehensive plan. And that plan consisted of trying to merge our zoning and the public intent, right? And then again in 2010, we set the 2020 comprehensive plan, okay, one at which I chaired. And we, which I think Muskego in general has received accolades throughout the state for Adam, Jeff, and the committee's work on the 2020 plan. And that plan is basically an entire culmination of a year's work going throughout public hearings and inputs throughout the city. And all in the intent and interest of trying to find, what's the highest and best use for our land, right? Well, in doing that, the conditional uses that were attached to each of these zoning areas were done under those laws, right? So now I get the state changes it, and I'm not questioning the will or intent of our legislators. However, we are simply not faced with, you're basically having people come here, and the comment you said that we really need to look at how we assess conditional use grants. The big part that we always used was, is it compatible with existing land uses of the surrounding area? Because we've denied multiple times uses that simply were not compatible, but may have addressed BSO type related issues, right? Because we use the BSO as a tool. However, whether or not that use is compatible with existing land uses, there's some objectivity there, and maybe some subjectivity. But all in all, we're trying not to be arbitrary, capricious, or discriminatory, and we've always held that our evidence, if I suggest that, hey, this conditional use does not meet the characteristics of the existing area, my evidence to that is the comprehensive plan that the city of Muskego has passed. And it's not a plan that's been passed over a month, right? I mean, it's taken a year. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here. I'm just going through what probably no one here has since the early 2000s. So looking at this and looking at the number of opinions, it's the old joke, right? You ask an attorney a question, you get one answer. You ask 18 of them, you get 50 answers, right? So, and I get it. However, I'm not so sure that saying yes or no changes my mind yet on how I look at this, because this is very uncharted. Even the law as it was written and a lot of the opinions out there, the leads, right? And I'm sure you've read them too. We've talked, recommend zoning moratorium or CU moratoriums to go through and start taking these off. If this new law changes, right, the framework of how our zoning code is written, right? Because right now our zoning code is written with the laws or the previous laws to reflect the will of the people of our city. Well, if those laws are changed, then we need to freeze this and have those new laws reflect on our zoning. Otherwise, we're always going to be, and I'm not suggesting anyone here is thinking otherwise, but otherwise we're almost held hostage to something like this. So I guess going forward, I'm not sure I know we're talking about the BSO here and stuff, but right now, I'm not so sure I'm even past the point of being in favor of this and even thinking that it meets it. So I guess that's my challenge.
I just want to follow up with what you're suggesting, a moratorium or a zoning code change is only the council.
Right.
Okay? And that's a process. And when a business has already come forward.
Understood.
It just want everybody to be clear, that wouldn't affect what's before us today. So even if something changed going forward, it would be for something going forward. But it wouldn't be for what's here today, because they came forward back in November, I believe.
Our first conversations were in November 7th.
Legislation even passed.
And I guess the question I have then to end my diatribe here, but so the question I have is, if a commissioner believes that this development is not consistent with existing or neighboring land uses, and we can cite our comprehensive plan as an evidence to that. Is that simply enough? And there are opinions out there that suggest it may be.
I think the question with that would be, is the comp plan, and I know the comp plan is more than just a map,
right?
But looking at land uses specifically calls out commercial uses as a blanket name. So I think that's the hard part. Is you could of course, like an attorney could argue either way.
Right? I mean, I guess that's why.
And I think that's why there has been a moratorium in some of the other neighboring communities now.
We found none. Our legal
was in the newspaper.
There's been some talked about,
Okay,
but
talked
the communities
to.
kind of just dropped off. Maybe for legal direction or something. I'm not sure. It's good to know.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. I guess just so the commission's aware, I'm not at that point where I even am comfortable saying this land use is appropriate. So.
I have a question. Have you done a study of traffic in the area?
First, I'll state my name. My name is Lauren Downing. I work for Arc Design Resources. We are the civil engineer and surveying consultant working with Casey's. And thank you for the question. No, a traffic count and then formal traffic impact analysis was not performed based on discussions that were had with the county that they were not going to require one, and they did not anticipate any issues due to the use. Part of that is because about 50%, at least 50%, that's conservative, is pass-by trips. So it's people who are already traveling, and then they turn right in, and then they turn out and they leave. That's a lot of the trips at a gas station.
The county told us 9,600 cars a day.
9,600, okay, thank you. Okay. Are you anticipating that you'll be generating more traffic, or pretty much?
During the peak hour, it's anticipated to generate under 40 additional trips. So that's 40 trips in and 40 trips out. That's how they're counted. So it's 80 trips total, about 40 in and 40 out as a rough number.
Okay. That's the new generation.
That would be what was generated by adding the development, correct?
Okay. What are you anticipating? How many millions of gallons do you think of pumping a year? What do you think? I
don't know.
Based on your other locations?
I'm not sure on that one. I'm sorry.
Between 2 million and 4 million, or what? I don't know.
I'm going to have to defer, and we'll get a number from Casey's on that.
Any other questions or discussion?
I have some of the concerns, obviously, with the neighborhood, but we're here to decide whether or not this is a good use for that land. There's, so our opinions on whether or not they like it in their backyard or not is maybe not for us to decide. Can it be used for this? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. I am a little concerned about. I've never read or heard so much about benzene in my life. I'm definitely going to have to research that a little bit. Certainly, I know we cited the one-armed robbery we had here because it was pretty, high profile. I don't think that's a huge problem in Muskego, although it does bring a little bit different element. I do have some compatibility issues with the neighborhood across the street, but it's the noise, it's the light, it's the benzene, those types of things, and I just like to educate myself a little bit more, maybe get some more information based on studies before I'm ready to proceed with any type of.
I'd like to follow up because I'm sure Adam will address it next time anyhow, but anything environmental, benzene or otherwise, is not in our purview. It's the state, so we can't even make any requirements on that. Our hands are tied.
Well, I can have an opinion on that could sway my vote, and I certainly can. It
doesn't fit in the ordinance. It's one of those, like, it has to fit into what we state in our ordinance, and that's not part of it.
I know it's on record, and if we make the wrong decision going down the line, we've opened up a bad can of worms. So I don't want to be part of that.
Well, one of the reasons I asked the question about how much fuel is pumped, the studies that someone cited were pumping 3.6 million gallons a year.
Right.
And probably the worst major cause of benzene is from smoke, from cigarette smoke. Also, it's also in many, many household products that we use every day. So that one's a tough one.
I understand it's used for.
Yeah. You start your car in your
for
garage,
what purpose the word and the tactic is being used. I get that. I just want to make sure that I'm comfortable with. That's my personal thought on it. So I would say there'd be no way, shape, or form where I'm ready to cast any vote on it tonight at all. So if Adam is recommending deferral, I'm.
Well, I think the one thing though Adam would like us to do is at least concur or have a consensus that his suggested changes, staff's suggested changes, you're in agreement with that so far.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that.
Just so that they can at least know. I mean, if there's anything you don't think that he put in there that just shouldn't happen, now's the time to say that.
I would like to maybe take this one step farther, and I think that it was a very, very, very good point tonight, was the way that the pumps are oriented right now. The cars facing out to the street. I think this kind of goes, it's twofold. The building is positioned towards the back of the property, and the pumps are out in front. And I guess I have a problem with that complete orientation. Not only do I have a problem with the building being in the back and the pumps being out front, but I also have an issue then with the way that the drive is then placed on Mercury, and I think that that's a very difficult way for cars to maneuver into this site. So I think from a plan standpoint and the layout here, I would have a lot of concerns with the current layout as provided.
The road access stuff would be the engineering after.
I'm okay with the road access location. I'm not good with the way
the pumps. We understand.
The pumps and the drive, the way the drive is positioned. I think access to the pumps coming off of Mercury Drive is I think it's very challenging. The way it's currently positioned, you have to drive in, you make a hard right, now you're going to try to make a hard left to get to the pumps. If you look, you can't actually make a left and get to the pumps the way this is positioned right now. If we could bring it back on screen, I think the battery might have went dead, but yeah. But if you can see what I mean, the logistics to actually get into the pump, like other gas stations put the pumps on angles because when you drive in, you can drive to the pump. So I think that there's some challenges here right now with this layout.
Okay, that's noted.
I've got one on traffic. Oh,
go ahead.
I wanted to talk about the deliveries. I know it was a huge issue when we did Walmart and it was near a subdivision. And Rick did a good job on his hours, but I would like to limit them even more. 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., not 7:30, Monday through Friday. And on weekends, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. I don't think anybody needs to be making a delivery after 5 o'clock except UPS.
I think Rick has some, he laid out some pretty, maybe not all, but reasonable considerations at least, which would make this certainly more palatable to consider going forward.
Sorry.
Did we have a discussion about the county's traffic plan? So if this goes in and we get the traffic counts pick up, do we know what the county's plan is to maintain, or we might not have gotten that far yet in asking that? I'm not sure how that goes.
I mean, the counties looked at the proposal, looked at the layout, and based upon existing traffic counts and accident records, those are the two biggest things they look at, and existing lane configurations. They said this proposed use will not warrant an analysis or any improvements of any type, especially because there's an accel and decel lane and a bypass lane on Janesville and Mercury being a local street. There was nothing that they said that they could require or that they would mandate as part of this. That was two different people at the county that have said that now in the traffic division.
That was like it. Thank you.
Why is there that little island that comes out on the east side of the building that parallels Mercury?
It's to protect the parking lane. We usually want islands to protect the parking lanes because you could have a car parked right next to that.
That's where it makes the turning so much such a big challenge.
If you removed it, you'd still have a car parked right there.
Yeah.
It's it's to protect the parking as a result of moving the driveway down from staff recommendations.
I understand.
As far as deliveries go, typically Casey's gets one fuel delivery per week. So this isn't like an everyday thing. And it's also typically one of their larger delivery trucks per week. And then you'll still have, and it is based on need, but so that's the typical delivery schedule, is once per week for each of those. And then outside of that, there will be like your Frito-Lay, like your smaller trucks that deliver some of the items that the main vehicle doesn't deliver.
To that point on deliveries?
Yes.
It comes in by semi? Or
Yes.
Okay, so gasoline deliveries come in by semi.
Yes.
And then I assume, I guess, they run a hose off the truck and they put it into the tanks, right? So, again, currently in this layout, I wouldn't be able to walk myself through how a semi actually delivers on this site and then exits the site.
Mm-hmm.
I think, again, just the layout of this is not, it's not considering.
We'd be happy to provide turning movements for the next meeting.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Because that would probably help you more than me trying to describe it.
Is there any thought to Jeremy's previous point with the pumps being right on the road? Is there any way to kind of invert the configuration here, keeping the pumps to the industrial park side?
I don't believe that sorry, this is really loud.
Yeah, I know.
I'm sorry. I think there are some issues with the required setbacks from the front setback is much larger than the rear setback. If the front setback was the same as the rear setback, obviously that would change things. But
the rear setback, I don't have it from me. It's like 5 or 10 feet, pretty minimal. Where along any street is a 40-foot setback. That includes canopy or building.
Okay. Well, if safe to safely have a building, you want to be 40 feet off the road anyway, right?
And the 40's off the lot line, so it is further from the roads, but still, that's very typical in the CO.
So.
One
of you has this answer.
Essentially, it reduces the width of the lot by about 30 or 35 feet, depending on what the rear setback is, which would be too narrow. Imagine everything getting 30 feet smaller.
Can that be considered, is what you're saying? Adam, what say you?
I'm not supposed to design it.
Yeah, nobody's designing it, but how would I'm not following how the setback would actually change. I'm looking at this, we had a 40-foot setback in the front, wouldn't it still be a 40-foot setback? If the building moved up to the front and the pumps moved to the back?
The north and east are still always 40,
Yeah. So then the pavement, which is in between the pumps and the roadway.
Okay.
So if you turned everything 180 degrees and then you slid everything back, that pavement is going to be on the rec path.
Yep, so we'd have a reduced amount of pavement.
Yeah.
But a straight shot through. So maybe we don't need all that pavement. Just something to think about and consider.
We can look into that. I'll leave it at that. We can look into it.
I think it addresses some of the immediate concerns of the noise, the light, if you're going to have increased noise, it would just make sense to try to keep that to the south towards the industrial park, you know. That's my thought.
What's the landscaping concept, or is there any between currently the concrete and the road itself? So is it a concrete pad? It's this curve right here.
In the between the drive aisle.
Janesville Road and the concrete in front of the pumps.
I have a copy, but that won't help.
Is that berm?
No, it's not in the discussion.
So it's like a strip of.
Some sort of strip of landscape, but no height differential between the road and the property itself.
No.
Mr. Adams already recommending additional plantings and things for screening. So.
I didn't catch those or berms. If this layout stayed, there is no berms.
Correct.
The 10-foot distance between, we require 10-foot parking offset from any driveway to a lot line. So that gives them a 10-foot space to do whatever that would be, whether it's landscaping, berming.
Is that enough for 10 feet to do a, that's not a lot for a berm though?
You could not get to have a berm because I think we have a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 slope requirement for berm.
Yeah, so it's really just land, I mean, it would be like planting,
The
right?
proposal now does not include a berm.
Okay.
Correct.
So what would it take to, so for the berm, you would need an extra 12 feet? So, right?
Depending upon the height you would request would depend on how much space would be needed.
So, that'd be interesting. Because if you moved it 180 degrees, okay. I've got one other question, Adam. So when we go through these self fireworks and stuff, they're always at gas stations, right? So
we only have one at a gas station. Most of them are grocery stores.
So are we gonna? Is that possible? That's gonna happen here too?
Someone would have to come in front of this board before anyone could do it, whether it's Casey's or someone else, unless it's inside the store.
And all those concerns will come into play if you're
at
saying
that time
space.
when they do it.
Yeah, anyone that sells those things now, like if they lease to somebody or on their own outdoors, they have to come in front of Planning Commission first.
Okay.
There's no guarantee that that's allowed.
Just going back a little bit, I'm sorry, but I don't want to get too far from it. Going back on the landscaping, would there be an appetite from the developer to perhaps participate in some enhancements across the street?
I can't commit to anything, but they are significantly landscaped, and there's a pretty significant berm on that side already.
I know that, but I also know there's some room for improvement there. I'm just...
Just thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Well, I'd like to see a berm along that side, so if you considered some rotation of the pumps, put a berm in. From a presentation standpoint, as you come down the road, it doesn't look like you're pulling off the side of the road into a gravel entrance area, and so to speak, a old-fashioned gas station. It has a decent presentation to it, and I think from entering the city of Muskego, it wouldn't be a bad idea.
That would be interesting to see if they could do that. So if you
so much
rotate it,
property that would eat up here.
yeah. So if you rotate it 180 degrees, or maybe
Which direction would you picture the front and back facing? Just so I'm clear. So right now the front faces north-ish. Are you saying so the front would face east towards Zimbro or west towards Journal?
Well, it'd be interesting each one.
I'd like to see south.
Yeah,
personally.
south would be the best. I think actually if they could do it, and then if they could get the berm, of course you'd have to eat up some space. Then you're going by Janesville. It's essentially the same as across the street.
It's more. It is a feel more of the
industrial
park.
Industrial park, right.
Right.
So it does push it back, and then that that would be an interesting rendering to show, actually.
So have store parking in front of the building?
The store parking would be on the industrial side towards the trail, towards.
Everything would be.
So you take this whole idea and flip it.
So you would. Yeah, I mean, they would have to eat up some
I get what they're
space.
saying, but I'm thinking if it's a retail business.
Then the retail business, the building is on the street. That's what we want. That's what our planning guidelines say.
In this zoning, it doesn't. I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but in this guide, it doesn't. Some of our districts do. But that could be
Right, but you wouldn't be averse to seeing it if it.
No.
Yeah.
No, because we want four-sided architecture anyways, so that backside should look just as good as the front.
Facing south would be, but you'll have to see. I mean, it determines how bad you want this, and if you're going to eat up that land, see if the rendering can do it. I mean that's not the best way to say it, how bad you want it, but if your development can accommodate that. These are just suggestions. I mean,
I understand.
For further discussion at the next meeting.
I'm not even there yet, so.
Currently, where's your fuel
refueling
tanks, refueling areas over here?
Just west of the building. There's a dumpster enclosure just west of that. They show us like two little ovals and a little rectangle, kind of in the southwest part of the site.
Yes.
So they just access right get to Janesville Road from there. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, maybe there's a better configuration, but quite honestly, from a retail standpoint, I can't imagine how you'd want to push that building up to the roadway and not have parking in front of the building. Just me.
Adam touched on outdoor sales, none being allowed. Typically, propane is sold outside, so maybe this is something.
A lot of properties are not allowed propane sales.
No propane sales at all.
Like the places I know that have approvals for them, and I can't say no one's violating it. If they are, we can address that if it comes up. But the places that have them approved are places like that have like hardware stores or something that have like a garden center. So it's outdoors, but it's in like an enclosed area. I know we have one gas station that was approved for them outdoors, but they built like a fencing around it so you don't actually see it. You know, we don't want the outside stuff to be an advertisement. If people know to come there for it and it's in an area that's enclosed, I can think of 2 gas stations now. One, it's behind a fence. 2 of them are behind fences. So they can have them, but they're screened. And we understand they can't be indoors. Some places have opted to not have them at all because they didn't want to screen them.
Okay.
Is there anything else? No? Okay.
For
now. Do you have any questions before we...
Just to summarize, everybody would prefer to see a modification which further increases the green space adjacent to Janesville Road to get a berm to fit in, if I'm understanding whatever, at a minimum, that's what everybody is desiring to see. The architectural comments that Adam had made weren't specifically, I don't think, addressed. Does that mean everybody is in? Everybody is in consensus with all of Adam's comments? Okay. And then I need to provide a truck turning exhibit, depending on the layouts which are feasible for the next time. Did I miss anything?
I guess what I'm trying to get at is to try to address some of the concerns with lights, headlights, and whatnot, and noise to buffer that from the neighbors.
With the berm, you mean, or just
with
in general?
Or building movement, or
yep,
or
whatever suggestion.
Rotating the pumps, or I mean, we're trying to, believe it or not, it sounds like we're trying to make it more difficult on you, but we're trying to give you more options.
Just taking it in.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I'm understanding, it's not necessarily the site's lighting, because that is required to meet the 0.5 foot candles. That's the concern. It's the automobile lighting and the routing of the vehicles. That's a concern for the adjacent properties.
For me, more so.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
The other lighting is addressed through our code.
Correct. So I just want to make sure I was understanding.
The city has the option of not allowing beer or liquor, right? I mean, you have to grant them a license, right?
I don't think so. I think the law's changed on that too. If I'm not, I can't remember.
It might have. I've never heard of a reason why the city has, unless there's been a historical problem with that specific user. And even if there's been problems, it's usually limited suspensions.
Because there are some things this commission cannot address. That would be one.
Yes.
Yeah, so
that would be finance.
So if that's an issue, that would be for, yeah.
Correct.
And the hours of operation. So what is unrealistic for a gas station? Like what would be like if I said, just for the project, if I said, okay, your hours of operation are from 8 to 2. Is that unrealistic?
2 in the afternoon?
Yeah.
You're not talking 2 a.m.? I'm just kidding.
Is that unrealistic?
Yes. I will not be able to commit to specific hours, but I can pretty confidently say those hours would not be found to be acceptable.
Come back with Well, what B, because that alone may address, because what you're looking to do is address what these good people are bringing forward. So the hours of operation may address a lot of stuff. May not be palatable to you, but they may be palatable for getting this approved. So,
well, but we're on 5 to midnight now.
Yes,
But
and those are preferred. Those are the preferred.
Right.
Yeah.
But your original proposal said 6 to 11 or 5 to midnight.
Yes.
But the
Yes.
commission can deem.
Right.
But then we have to, yeah. So. And then. Okay.
The delivery hours that were suggested are those something that doesn't destroy your business?
The preferred delivery hours, I do have this that they would like to see, is 5 a.m. to 9 p.m., which has been suggested to limit it to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So I've taken that note and will be.
That's Monday through Friday. Weekends
Correct.
would be different if there's
Yeah.
deliveries
9 to 5 is what I wrote down.
So when we say delivery, is that fuel too?
That's how I had the resolution written right now.
For fuel?
We had it written for any delivery.
For
and
any
garbage
deliveries,
pickup.
like any.
We've had lots of garbage pickup issues lately.
Yes.
And so we included garbage pickup and any delivery, including fuel.
We used to, and then, they get the refuse trucks in there, and they think, well, we're not a.
Right, we're not delivering. We're
They
taking
pick,
away.
they pick up at hours that I didn't even know the trucks ran. That's how crazy it's gotten.
So, thank you for doing that. So that would be basically fuel would be included. So under the proposed, it would just be Monday through Friday, and weekends and holidays would not have fuel delivery at all.
No, it says 9 to 5, I think she said.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah. Although I would say a reconfiguration would probably necessitate less of those restrictions.
Well, that'd be you.
Right. That's what I'm just talking. I mean, we're hoop,
Just trying to keep you in line, Paul.
That's okay. I'll get that when I get home too. Thank you. That's appreciated.
Yeah, I'm about to.
Maybe they can propose something after hearing all this hours that.
And we have to find a balance point between making sense to you as a retailer and making sense.
Which is why I said that.
Right, because we don't want a building there for a period of time and have it vacant.
Yeah. They put so many restrictions on us, we couldn't.
Exactly.
stay.
You can't tie their hands. So, okay.
Does that wrap it up for tonight?
Yeah, let's see what you come back with.
Yeah.
But I would actually, can you have this on the agenda for, I don't want to be confined to have, we could always defer it again if we need more information after another one.
Yeah, one thing that I brought up to the applicant earlier is that since this meeting was later than normal because of the elections and absences and stuff last week, we're already that much closer to the next deadline. So the next deadline is like early next week or mid next week. So there is a short turnover time, and I'm not sure what Casey's or the development team will be able to revise or not. So heads up, and this may come back next month. It may have to be the month after, but
there's no harm.
there's a shorter time turnover.
I mean, take your time. We want to do this right, as Paul said. Want to make this right. So I'm not going to be hurried through this.
Okay.
And you've been very nice too up there.
I appreciate that. Waited patiently.
Yes, you have.
Very respectful, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. So I think with that, we need a motion to defer.
So moved.
Second.
Please cast your vote. Is deferred unanimously. Thank you, everyone. Okay, continuing on, Resolution 24, 2018, approval of a conditional use grant and building site and operation plan for Casey's store located on Janesville and College. So, Adam?
Do we? Yeah.
No, we need a motion.
Move to
Sorry.
approve.
Second.
Thank you.
Mayor, do you mind if I use your iPad to be able to put out there?
Juice.
I just want to pull up the new site here just so we can look at the site plan at least. All right, so when I'm pulling this up, as we talked about here, this location is located right now on the corner of College Avenue and Janesville Road. It's our northeast gateway to the community. Out in the boulevard in this area, this is the split where cars either go onto College, proceeding to New Berlin or northward, or they can stay in Janesville and head kind of southwest into the community. This site currently houses, or formerly, however you want to word it, housed bank property. As part of that, this would come down. So this property's been vacant for quite a while. At one point, I think it was Naturescapes Landscaping was going to do something here, and I believe they're selling it, so I don't know if it wasn't right for them or what, but this is the first proposal we've had here since the bank has closed. So we would look at this as a redevelopment. As far as zoning goes, zoning is similar situation. Zoning allows this allows this use with a conditional use grant. Same size convenience store, but with a different design, as there's a different design guide for this area. Overall, there'd be 5 product fuel dispensers with 10 fueling stations. Similar hours were suggested by Casey's, and similar delivery restrictions were suggested by staff. So this is very similar to the other approval. A lot of things carry over. The biggest differences on this site is they will have to account for their own stormwater management, which there is plenty of room to do. So that's really not a big concern because that's always addressable. I think they're proposing even underground storage potentially, but that's up to them in the end. Biggest changes relate to architecture. This is part of the area that not only is governed by the general design guide as the other site was. This is governed by the general design guide as well as the Test Corners Historic Crossroads design guide. So this area, even though it's not necessarily surrounded by historic properties, there's a certain type of kind of more historic, kind of character-rich look that the city's boards and committees have adopted long ago in this area. Some great examples of this design guide. Bushy's is a really, really good example of it. Test Corners Auto pulled some features from it. The Heritage Muskego Senior Center that's being built is a really good example of it. And there was an MW Marine building, which wasn't a great example, but because of some company decisions with their suppliers, the suppliers didn't want a new building, so they didn't end up building it. But there has been some great examples proposed here. So there has been some efforts definitely in the design of this building. If you look at the elevations in your packet, it's definitely a different design than the other building from an aesthetic standpoint. It has more features that kind of fall under these historic design guidelines, but with that, the building kind of sacrificed a lot of masonry. The code does talk about allowing like lap siding and things like that, and there is some. So there's lap siding, there's rustic cultured brown stone, there's some kind of tapered column features. So why there are steps to go towards that design guide. Definitely on the staff level, we're thinking there should be some more improvement to kind of really tie the design guide, especially since you have some elevations that have large areas of just straight siding. Normally, we want to see 50% masonry. Planning Commission definitely has the ability to waiver on that. We have, depending upon the overall material usage of other products and based upon the overall design. Enhanced design can warrant less masonry if the design is that high of a quality. So there are a couple items that staff is suggesting for the building. Number one is, since this is a main gateway into the city, this is literally the first Muskego commercial property you see. We have a very nice, expensive gateway sign in the median right in front of this property. So we definitely were thinking there should be some general building enhancements to really help this tie even more into that historic crossroads design guide. Elevations, all of them should show more examples of four-sided architecture, as well as more window elements, and also looking. One of the big things here is this building is a lot more visible from the rear. With the last building, you didn't see the rear as much as it faced the bike trail. You still saw it a little bit. Here, you see the back very, very bluntly from College, given its location. It's set off the road a little bit, but you definitely still see it. As far as material usage, like you said, we're thinking that there's a little too much lap siding and not enough other material usage or general design requirements. Relating to the roof, the same issue as the other property, that they do show a gable roof, and they do, hip roof, and they do show a gable feature having some shake in it, and that shake is definitely helpful, but maybe that can be used on other properties. Some of the drawings included showed shake in that area, and some showed siding. We'd rather see the shake. as well as that roof design issue that came up with the other property. You know, we commend that they are screening their outdoor rooftop mechanicals. It's just the way that it was done makes it very obvious that you're screening something, and we just thought there could be a little more integration either in building roof design or ground placement. As far as canopy, same kind of questions. We didn't have a lot of detail, some basics on canopy, but same thing. In this one, because of that historic nature and having the hip type roof, we're suggesting maybe a hip or roof type element or gable on the canopy, as well as doing some brick or stone on the canopy, on the columns, and also suggesting that the canopy should not contain as much red. It just is kind of bold. And we understand the building has some red and it kind of works in its nature, but you know, the question is, I guess, how much is enough or too much? When it comes to site layout, this site shows a little more parking. There's 20 parking stalls. That exceeds the need that they are required to have per code. Some of the parking stalls are smaller than we typically require. We normally want to see 10 by 20. They're asking for 9 by 20. Planning Commission can grant less if there's a reason why. I'm not sure if there is a reason, but that's something that can be talked about further. Access is existing on the 2 county highways. College is a county highway, and so is Janesville Road. So the county will have any kind of access concerns here if there are any. This one, we have not heard any issues from the county, especially Janesville Road is pretty wide, just redone. We haven't heard any issues from College, but if the county will have to formally weigh in on that before it's done. They do show landscaping throughout the site, but we will have to have a little more review on that. Historic Crossroads does talk about having a specific 15-foot buffer abutting Janesville Road with landscaping, so they definitely want a little more landscaping along the roadways, especially Janesville, to kind of amp that up. Signage, same thing. They're proposing similar signage as seen in other sites. One thing that wasn't talked about in the other development, but is unique to both, is they're looking at having some changeable signage, 2 signs on the building, and I think it's 4 signs on the canopy posts. Correct. That aren't electronic, but they are like an ad, like whatever that weekly special might be. Something staff the code doesn't really specifically address being against. It may not be a horrible idea, as in the sense that if it gives you a controlled type of changeable signage. You know, businesses like this, and you've seen a Quick Trip, as they don't always follow their rules, like to put up a lot of temporary stuff. If you have a defined location, a defined holder, a defined size, it's a much more clean way to help these businesses succeed. So that's something that staff didn't have a big issue with, but might be a talking point going forward for both sites. Lighting on this site does meet the photometric requirements of the 0.5-foot candles at the lot lines, so they are meeting what the code requires. And I think part of that's just because they're allowed a little bit different light placement here. Stormwater, like I said, will be dealt with on site. One of the things that was brought up by our utility and engineering staff was water does not currently municipal water service this property. It's about 700 feet southwest on Janesville Road. Preliminary discussions have indicated that city staff on the engineering and utility side think that the water should be extended to this site as part of this development. To give you an example, when that Heritage Muskego senior living site that's under construction now, they extended water from a much further distance, and that's why it is within 700 feet now. And this would kind of be the last connection with the Muskego. So that's something that the Public Works Committee would have to make that formal decision. If the applicant was willing to do it, it doesn't really need to go to Public Works, but if the applicant's going to question it, Public Works Committee would make that call in the end. So that's not a Plan Commission requirement by any means, but it's still important to note. Other than that, the resolution just has a couple protections relating to, engineering does have to approve the design, bollards, railings, ladders, all matching building color, handicap signs mounted in the ground, screening mechanicals.
Lights will be brown.
Yeah. So staff is recommending deferral this one just because of some of the similar items.
In case it was in question.
Yeah. So staff is recommending deferral for the items noted, and just I think a little further site development on the architecture. Like I said, this building has come a long way. The original drawings I mentioned from Casey's were a much more plain building, and they've definitely come a long way. Just think there needs to be a little more design added, is at least my opinion.
Thank you, Adam. Did you want to add anything before?
I would be happy to answer any questions, or
Yeah, I concur with the four-sided architecture, especially as prominent as this is, and the fact that it's on a corner between College and Janesville, and it's the main first thing you see when you come to town. The drive. Can I ask a question? Has anyone contacted the county in regard to those drive locations?
They're existing, and the county has never required existing unless they purchase the rights to them, which they have not here.
Okay.
But because they are still going to redo the approaches, there will be, I think, a county permit still involved.
Okay. All right. It just, it looks, knowing they're existing is what it is.
The one is technically a right-in, right-out to Janesville because of the median in the middle. So it will act as a right-in, right-out, so people won't be taking if that was the movement in question.
Yeah, and we know they wouldn't allow full access. They're just given the proximity to the intersection and the signage and stuff, so that would stay that way.
Makes sense.
Adam, with I guess we haven't discussed with the county yet, right?
Regarding access here?
Well, traffic count. So is it ever possible that the county, I guess ever possible, government body, is it feasible down the road over the next 5 years or 10 years that the county would light college?
I have heard no talk of that. They do not want to light anything unless they absolutely have to because of the cost. Any of the recent lights, and I'll use the lights by Parkland Town Center, that was strictly not because the county required it. Even there, the county didn't require it. That was developer driven and developer expense paid for.
Okay. I was just thinking of that because that would, certainly that'd be an issue, but that would be a county.
It'd be a county issue. I mean, that curve coming off of College and going through here, now that there's going to be a lot of traffic there, it's actually kind of an awkward traffic situation, and this will definitely not make it good. but it's existing and it's there, and it's like
because you're right on two county roads.
Yep.
College and Janesville, so the city has no jurisdiction on the county roads.
Right.
So, the placement here is much more palatable on this location than the others. Your issues. But generally, looking at the design here, county roads are good spots for it. And I just don't know if they would light a three-way. I don't know.
It doesn't mean they couldn't, but I haven't heard of it. I
haven't heard of it.
I wouldn't guess it being in the near future.
I don't know if this would necessarily, in my mind, necessarily increase traffic a ton. It's already very heavily traveled.
We did run the quick traffic numbers from the ITE manual, and compared to a bank during your PM peak hours of trips, it's generating approximately the same new trips as the bank development would generate, because banks have slightly less pass by, about 35%. So they have approximately 116 total trips between in and out of their site during the PM peak hour based on the manual. This site with the five pumps, 10 fueling positions, is about 136 trips. So about 20 more trips total, but more of those are pass by. So the amount of trips you're adding to the roadway, based on who is already on the roadway, is about the same at about 31 compared to 38 with the bank. So
you're probably looking at most of the traffic going west.
Yeah.
Exit right back out.
Continuing west, yeah.
Yeah, right turn would be the best. The issue is always if you come in off of College, and you probably would be going left anyway. Is the point, right?
Right.
So you're just going to stop in there and then leave. I think that's.
It's westbound traffic, is right.
Yeah, unless you're on the south side of Muskego, and if you don't know how to make left turns,
we go straight over things. Yeah.
But generally speaking, that appears to be the general flow, I think.
Mm-hmm. That's about what's anticipated.
Everything that we've said on the previous one here, I think you got good guidance on that, right?
I have one just kind of curious question on it. Just looking at the front elevations, I know this is going to go way down a different path, and they're going to come back with them completely revised. But I was just curious, like the masonry right now, how tall is that below the windows? It doesn't look to be like. Is it normally that is it corporate design that it carries? Wouldn't it normally carry like to a sill of a window, or it seems to stop at an awkward spot? It's just an observation.
This looks like it is about possibly a little bit over 1 foot. This is not a corporate design. This is specifically designed for this. And so I will bring this back to the architect, but the architect reviewed the codes, and this is what he felt met the codes. So it may be the minimum to meet codes.
And I scaled it. 1.5 foot band is what it was, because I had that same question. I thought it just seemed light and low, like with, usually when you have this nice solid base feature, you want it to give some presence, and it's 1.5 feet right now is drawn.
So obviously that'll get addressed.
I just want to say it's 50% recommendation.
I gotta be honest. I don't know how else to say it.
Is there anything else?
Were Adam's delivery hours adequate, or could those possibly be extended beyond the recommended hours?
What were we using this?
So the way the resolution is written now, delivery hours, and we don't normally separate weekday from weekend, but 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. for any kind of delivery. That's how the resolution is written.
I would. I don't think I have an issue with that, but I would take out the weekend and holidays.
And we'll change those to what?
Yeah, no.
With no deliveries?
Yeah.
Really?
Well, what would be
The other site, though, I thought there was talk of having deliveries on weekends.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was. 9 to 5.
Not by Chris.
I would think you want to be consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Wouldn't we want to just be
Consistent,
And
yeah.
what's good for one is what we give to the other?
I agree, but I think they have to have deliveries. You can't count, especially long weekends. I mean, how do you deal with food stuff coming in? You got to address that. You don't want stale stuff on the shelves.
Well, how do you deal with?
Or nothing.
I mean, I think no, I got it. But the general concern is though, how do you reduce? Because that's where your greatest right is. It is going to be semis coming in there. Now, granted, on the Mercury one, how you render it could address that whole thing.
Mhm.
Actually, you could, actually do a lot by the burning and the road here. I mean, look at where they're going. There's a lot of. I don't know if that's their concern.
Well, you're probably talking 2 fuel deliveries. That's your big
Typically 1 fuel delivery per week.
Yeah.
So, but it's yeah. And it's based on need, so
Other location, it was thrown out there a couple different times and then suggested that they come back with something that makes sense. So I think same thing goes for this one.
So you can come back with Casey's proposed times based on this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Because there is while arguably map of Mosquito, you're by 2 county roads, so it makes sense. However, you do have that subdivision right on the south end of Janesville. So how far does the fence go up there? Not that that's helpful. Is that fence go up there for college?
Across the street?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so.
So just going to okay. I mean, there may be something there.
No, most of the homes that would be adjacent to this don't have a fence. The fence is much actually further up the road.
I guess the question is, does anything change from what exists now to when you put that development in? And I guess when the bank was there and you had to drive through, I don't know, I guess think about that. I don't know, is there a greater flow? Because the lights are actually off because the lights that would be affecting the south would be going south or would be coming off of College, right?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
So the parking down, yeah, they got their pumps
I
here
think he was asking, will it increase from what the bank was?
Oh, generally, the traffic that it will be generating is about the same as the existing bank, based on the trip generation manual.
because a bank is a destination, this is more of a drive-by.
And most people that, then if you're going to college, you're going to probably go right, and then you're going to go, you probably have to go out here then, right?
Yeah, you can only go that way.
Right, so then they can't, well, so then you can't, so then if you exit the development out of Janesville, you can only go right.
Correct.
You can't go-
Unless you go through the.
There is cross access.
It does maintain the existing cross access.
Yeah.
Is that first thing that it adjusts though, rather than first thing that up there?
No, I mean, I really would expect, and I've seen people, even with the site being vacant now, there's people that drive in this entrance with it being closed to get to the shopping center. If they're patronizing business on the east, I've seen it myself every morning. I'm surprised that how many people already do it, and that's good. Our code promotes that. Our code wants people to use shared access internally. So you could have some users, depending where they're going. If they want to head eastward and they don't want to go to college, it's they might take the extra 10 seconds
I wasn't
to
worried
drive
about
westward.
that. That would be okay because that's the shared access. I was looking at, you can't go left off the egress on Janesville.
Correct.
You can't go right. So then actually to the development south, you're not increasing what you have now with traffic lights coming at you because you're yeah. Or you'd go off College like you normally would anyway to go left. Okay, just trying to cycle this through.
I think the one thing to take away though from that was, I mean, just like on the last site, the way we've orientated the cars at the pumps, it's facing directly across the street into the neighbors, and if there is a way that can be considered.
Even west.
Because the bank really didn't have it. It was set back closer to College and orientated differently, and it only had the 3 lanes. And this is significantly, this is much greater. I mean, you're looking at, I don't know, 8 lanes or 7 lanes. What do you got there?
5 pumps, 10 fueling positions.
Could that be pushed more toward the west? I don't know. I mean, you could just, if there was some way to
orientate it,
yeah, because that would then certainly remove any aesthetic or noise issues like and traffic. Yeah, and then they would go right into the shopping area too, because it would just be back to more palatable to access it from both ends.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Because
Yeah, it's
you're
more like
sharing it,
again
right.
orientating it, turning it,
right
on a so many degrees here.
And that would
65 degrees
that
or
would
something.
actually be
I think they generally don't like people trying to parallel park in between other. But we will look at it.
Let's see what you can.
We'll look at it. We'll look at it.
What's with the narrow parking spots?
That's their standard, and
It's 9 by 20 is actually a very common.
Yeah.
In fact, I think with our pending code change, I think there was talk about going to 9 by 18.
9 by 18.6 is probably the most standard size I've ever seen. Really?
I mean, if we increase it to 10, then we would just lose the parking stalls, and it would be 17 and still meet code. So it's 6 in one, half dozen in the other. Whichever.
Selfishly, because I probably will be shopping there.
It's okay.
And he doesn't park real well.
That's fine.
Door dings, Yeah, you see how many trucks are in this community?
I know. It's like at Casey's. There's a lot of trucks at Casey's usually.
Is there anything else? We can move on to our last couple items.
What's left? We're getting
I know, that's what I'm afraid of.
I'm sorry.
Okay,
Were there any?
Have we provided all the input we want to provide? Thank you. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Cast your vote on the deferral. Deferral is unanimous. Clear? Now we got to. And now we need to vote on the.
That's it.
Oh, I'm sorry, we deferred it. Hello. I'm thinking we approved it. Sorry. Okay, it is. Okay, Resolution PC 25, 2018, Approval of building site and operation plan for Will Rose Apartments located on Janesville Road. Is there a motion?
Second.
Thank you. And Adam?
Thank you, Mayor. All right, so this approval is for the building site and operation plan amendment for Will Rose Apartments on the Bossy property. This is currently located along Janesville Road between Martin Drive and Glen Cove Court. This property received a rezoning that granted the basic density and building sizes and setbacks that you see here today. So back in, it was December 2017. So the things that were approved specifically as part of that rezoning was 2 apartment buildings, one 40 unit, one 50 unit, a clubhouse. So those were kind of approved just in concept and size. At the same time also, there was some height variations asked for to go to 36 and 38 feet as the predominant heights on the street side, which were approved as part of the rezoning. And one of the buildings was asked to have a reduced setback. Down to 30 feet from 40. So with all those items at hand, the rezoning was granted, subject to approval of a building site operation plan and any other kind of site development stuff, which is yet to come. So now the applicant has come forward for the site design. As I stated, phase 1, as we commonly will probably refer to it as, is going to be the 50-unit building, which is the western building on the site. And the 40-unit apartment building, known as phase 2, would be the eastern, and those are both part of this approval, even though they could be done in some phases. Phase 3 would be future clubhouse. The clubhouse details are not approved at this time, and those would need a separate approval from an architectural standpoint down the road. But the concept is acknowledging that they're being proposed. As far as unit breakdowns, they're looking at 28 one-bedrooms, 17 one-bedroom plus dens, and 45 two-bedroom units. They're estimating an approximate total residential count when it's all done of 159 residents, with the total floor area of both buildings being just a little bit over 162,000 square feet. As far as site layout and access goes, there's one access proposed right now, and I think it lines up with the existing farmhouse, if I'm correct, that's located along Janesville Road. The county, I believe, is only allowing one access point along Janesville, which is kind of what we expected. There is an existing boulevard cut in that area, so it is set up for it. The county will have to review to see if there's any additional turn lanes or anything required. We're not sure about that yet, but anything that would be required is easily addressable. There is still a full right-in, right-out access point on Janesville. As far as our engineering staff looked at this preliminarily in some staff meetings, and two of the things I should say that the staff and the engineering staff brought up as a concern. Engineering staff has deemed that they believe that one access point isn't sufficient when it comes to safe and effective egress. So engineering staff is recommended, and it's in the resolution, that the western driveway stub that's shown that kind of just dead ends right now into the future commercial lot, which was something that could be pending in the future on this corner here, was zoned for commercial, that this driveway be extended to Glen Cove Court, since there could be a commercial use there eventually already someday. Having that driveway access there is something that was going to probably happen eventually, and they would want to see it put in now as a means of access that would be used anytime, so not just emergency only. But we're stating it would not need to be curbed, as it could be altered at some time when that commercial site does develop further, but there would still be access there. As far as the other side of the site, kind of in the east or northeastern part of the site, engineering staff thought that this connection should be made to the existing Lindale Villa condos. When the Lindale Villa condos, which are the condos to the northeast, when those were built, there was always, at least originally in all the plans we saw conceptually, a connection between this site and that site. Now, the way that site developed, it probably isn't the most practical to have a fully used access point because that site has some pretty tight turning radiuses. But one of the things that one of the things the engineering department did see there, that they still think there should be some type of emergency-only access. Maybe 1 lane wide, it can be gated, but they just want there to be another means of egress because these are 2 large buildings that they thought that should be required. So those are listed in the resolution. Other than that, the site's shown being curbed. Driveways within the development would all be private. And as far as building locations go, like I said, the buildings meet the approved setbacks that were allowed as part of the planned development district. One kind of thing to note, parking. Parking on the site is handled underground parking within each of the buildings. Parking on site includes 128 enclosed underground stalls as well as 71 surface stalls. And that equates to about 2.21 stalls per unit. So hopefully someone has a fraction of a car. Sorry, it's been a long night. Zoning code requires 2 enclosed stalls per code, typically plus some visitor parking. This proposal does not meet that requirement, but the applicant has done some really good analysis, providing examples from other multifamily developments that they've developed relating to parking counts, and they've used kind of some semi-urban and suburban projects. And what they've realized is that having the 2.21 stalls is actually the largest parking ratio out of any of the projects that they've done that they thought were most comparable. And looking at the type of development, considering that half the units are one bedroom or one bedroom plus den, the parking does appear to be adequate in staff size. As they look at it, as you allocate one stall per one bedroom or one bedroom plus den and 2 stalls for each 2 bedroom, that would equal 135 stalls. That leaves an additional 64 stalls for guest parking or other residents. So why they would be looking for like a parking waiver here, it's something the Planning Commission has definitely granted in the past, and with the info they provided, staff's opinion at least is that it is sufficient parking for this kind of need. Relating to building design, these buildings have a more modern appearance that Muskego is kind of starting to adopt. As you look in your packets and look at the screen on the back, really these buildings I think have a great architectural design. They've started to take a lot of features that Muskego hasn't seen in apartment design yet, but has other communities have. So maybe you've been in places like Drexel Town Center or wherever and seen some of this more design, this more modern design aesthetic, which really is carried through in this building. You notice in the renderings, and the flat drawings are kind of hard to tell, but when you look at the perspective in the renderings, you can really start to see that there's a lot of protrusions and corners and different elements that give this building a lot of shadow lines and different depth that really seems to show its character. By no means is it some kind of flat box. So based upon that, staff, going into height quick, I guess since we talked about that quick, normal height's 30 feet as part of the planned development. They're allowed to have their main height be 36 feet along Janesville, with the high points and the features being 38 feet. Building 1 will have an exposed 4th level. The parking is partially exposed in the back. Phase 2 building, the 40 unit is completely underground parking, so it will look like a 3-story building all the way around. As far as materials go, there's a variety of materials that are proposed, include masonry, fiber cement cladding, architectural metal accents. The renderings kind of talk about and show the colors that will be used. The colors definitely seem to work well with the area in the neighborhood. Nothing that's really obtrusive or crazy, or that's something that people might seem objective to. As far as masonry goes, the total masonry for all 4 elevations on the 50-unit building is approximately 40%, and the 40 units 34%. And so while the design guide typically looks to see 50%, we've always stressed that the overall design is more important than meeting that 50% mark. And given the materials used here, and I didn't bring them down with me tonight, but we do have samples up in the planning office of the materials they're using. It's none of this cheap material. It's not just some cheapy siding. A lot of them are higher quality masonry products, even if they are type of masonry siding, or larger panels which have some nice reliefs to them. So staff definitely feels that this architecture is a great design. We think it's a nice addition to Muskego. It's a nice current addition when it comes to design, and we don't have any architectural recommendations that we were making in this case. Details relating to signage, lighting have not provided now, but those are things that Planning Commission can always assign staff to look at, as we normally do on a lot of projects. You know, our codes are pretty clear on those, so at the staff level we can always address that when the permits come in. They do show landscaping plan, appears to be ample landscaping through the site. City Forester would review it before permit issuance. As far as utilities go, there are utilities near the site. They will be expanding some utilities to or through the site. So that will be handled as part of our engineering. One thing to note that's been brought up in the past, the developer has been very good in working with the neighbors and engaging the neighbors in this area to be a good community partner. And they've had even some meetings on their own to talk with the neighbors. And as part of that, there was one of the main questions that was brought up related to wetlands in the area holding more water than they maybe should or have in the past. The developer team and city engineering team kind of both looked at this and kind of came to both a similar solution, that there's an area that maybe wasn't graded properly that I think is going to be looked at as part of this and hopefully help the problem. You know, we can never say solve anything completely, but definitely help mitigate the problem to make the situation better than it sits today. But otherwise, staff is recommending approval, subject to some of the normal conditions like screening of mechanicals and handicap signs in the ground and bollards matching the building. But we are recommending approval, and we definitely think this could be a nice, fresh, modern look to Janesville Road.
Thank you, Adam. That's a lot. Does anybody have any?
Very attractive buildings.
It is very nice. Good job.
Good job, Bill. Was there any, was the discussion with the neighboring community just to the west? Now that the street's going through to Glen Cove Court, was there concern there?
Yeah, they did have some concerns. The way that will go, though, all the traffic will have no need to ever go into the neighborhood. The bulk of the homes, there are two that are closer to the road. It's just the lot or product of layout of the subdivision. There were some concerns by the neighbors, but given that commercial site on the corner is commercially zoned, 1.5 acres, and given that the county will not allow other access points, it's one of those things where there's no other way, but there would have to eventually be some kind of driveway there, especially if that commercial site develops. I should say when, because the zoning is there. Right. So it's one of those things that, yes, there were concerns, but it's an example of I'm not sure how we would address it. I mean, if the development team's known about it, there's always going to be an access at some point. Maybe by it being now is a more of a main access, and maybe that helps kind of get everyone used to it. And then as the main commercial use does eventually happen on that corner, I shouldn't say main, but as the commercial use happens someday, then it could be improved to whatever standards it really needs to be.
Will there be some intent or design to keep construction traffic off that? They're going to enter and exit off of Janesville?
That was I guess maybe the development team can talk about that. I think there was some talk about that maybe being construction access because of how hard it is to get big things on and off Janesville Road easily, and because of some terrain changes. But that's something historically we have not regulated where construction traffic would approach. Now, does that mean they should be, we have set construction hours, so they should be following those construction hours, but that has not been something that we've historically regulated.
Well, just in the spirit of being a good neighbor.
Sure.
And those trucks wouldn't go into the subdivision anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. We've set construction hours. I mean, not frequently, but we've set that before where you can't do anything on Sunday before 10 or...
Yeah, there are city ordinances that already dictate that.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we could do that if you...
Here's what I'm thinking. I know Glen Cove Court, that's where the Lights on Glen Cove takes place in the winter, next December.
Absolutely.
I'm just thinking ahead, because there's already cars parked way down, they're...
Just waiting.
Yep, they are, really, truthfully.
Adam, can I, the Lindell Villa Road, that is only emergency.
That's what engineering department is suggesting, yes. They have no problem with it being gated as long as there's proper gate access that the emergency departments can use. That is what engineering is suggesting, yeah, on that Lindale Villa site. The concept plan, this site was actually supposed to be developed before Lindale Villas, and that concept plan always showed a stub to Lindale Villas. When the developments actually happened, it was just a Lindale Villas developer got up and moving first, even though this site was actually proposed first. It was in a much different layout. More buildings with smaller unit counts spread throughout the site. So from the earliest renditions that we received, there was always thought of a connection, but like I said, that site's kind of tight. Even though it meets turning radiuses for fire apparatus, it had to be built. That's why engineering was saying not full access, but emergency only access.
I just have, I guess just one question for the applicants, if I could. If you could just touch a little bit on the entrances to these buildings and kind of where they're defined and how they got to where they are and the orientation. This is the only thing that's a little unique to me.
No problem. Eric Harmon from AG Architecture. Business address is 1414 Underwood Ave, Wauwatosa, Wisconsin. So the site constraints on this building are tenfold, whether it's the wetlands or the topography or the single access point. So all of that was basically the driver to how we entered these buildings. On phase one, or building A, the site plan will work. Where you come into the building, we've got the exposed back garage, which will be a 4th floor that's exposed to that rear elevation, while we're holding the 3 stories of exposure to the street front with the sidewalks leading directly into residential entries. And we also have a community space off to the side of that, which will have a side door, which you can start to see.
I can put the rendering elevation
on the side of the plan. That doorway is strictly an internal use doorway from the amenity space that would be able to go out and use that patio. The entry into this building from a residential use or a visitor's use is actually at that 4th floor exposed area on the backside.
So is it the top rendering there and it's the end? Is that the entrance?
The lower right-hand corner of that upper image is the side window of the leasing office that would be present in the first phase of the building. If we go to the next image on the bottom left, you'll see the doorway there on the bottom left of that elevation. That doorway is the main resident and visitor entry into this building. On typical use, a resident will park their car either in the parking directly adjacent to that door or within the parking garage, which is accessed on the right side of the building. And the plan is gone now.
Sorry. Yeah, I thought this maybe shows the entry a little more defined.
Yeah, I think is a better picture, actually.
Okay, sure.
Perfect.
So the entrance right now, the entrance where guests is to come to that lower level, what we see in the rendering here, off the parking. That's the one thing that's just unique to me. Normally it pops, right? And you say, oh, that's where I go. And this building to me, like the architecture is awesome. I love it. But the entrance doesn't, I looked at it, I'm like, I don't know where to go.
Mm-hmm. So it was really a driver of how the topography is working on this site. There is a 15-foot grade change from where we enter this site to the back portion of the building. And we basically have one opportunity to get down to that level and then go in each direction to hit these buildings. So in doing the site layout, our important feature is that we create a strong corner and a strong presence of the building when you enter the site, and then count on the traffic pattern to lead you to the entry of both buildings. From a visitor standpoint or resident entering standpoint, their only access and their only roadway connection will be directly to that front door. But your presence and the experience you have entering the site is really determined by that front corner of the building.
So essentially parking is going to drive, where the only place I can park is going to tell me where to go.
Very much so.
And if you're having a hard time with that, you'll find some signage or something that you put out there.
And when you look at the, we still have that one up.
Yep.
If you look at how that parking is laid out, the large grass median and sidewalk condition is directly in front of that door, because that really is our wayfinding element at that point.
And no concern for, a lot of money's been spent on the building and all that. No concern for like a small canopy there, or just something to define that's an entrance feature.
We could potentially put a small canopy there. Right now, the driver of it is that it's actually a balcony for the residents up above at that point. So to not conceal their view outside of their balcony, didn't want to add any sort of large feature there defining the entry.
Okay, all right. Yeah, that'd be my only comment architecturally, is just that the entrance isn't defined. I think the other building does a better job of that.
Yeah, the other building has a little glass vestibule that comes out and has the bent plate come over the top. Our constraints on this side are just a little bit tighter on the site.
Okay. Depends how far do you guys...
You won't get lost now. Now you know.
Definitely. I won't get lost. And if anybody watches the video of this, which...
we could make a canopy and name it the Bartlett Honorary Canopy. Then we could take care of that.
The pizza guy's in trouble, but we're going to be fine.
How close is Jimmy John's? It's only like a couple blocks away.
Yeah, it is. Okay, are there any other questions, or...
No, it looks great.
I think it does as well.
Great addition.
Thank you.
Okay, so with that, cast your vote. It's approved unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you for your patience.
No, thank you guys.
We were worn down and we couldn't argue anymore. You were in the prime spot.
We planned it that way.
Okay, Resolution PC 27, 2018, approval of a 4-lot certified survey map for the Welts property located in Harvest Court.
So moved. I will second.
Okay. Adam?
Thank you, Mayor. So this land division, a 4-lot land division, is proposed in front of us today. There's 4 lots ranging in size from 2.02 acres to 11.08 acres. It's located on what has always been dedicated as part of Harvest Court, but the section of the land division, you can see the map highlighted in red, kind of, the section of the map that's highlighted, this portion of the road was always publicly dedicated, but it was never built to city standards. Old codes basically said if you had a certain number of homes or less, you could still publicly dedicate it, but not have to improve it. Because of many maintenance issues and ownership questions and things, the city has since not allowed this to happen anymore. So all the homes on here, there's 3 homes that access this are grandfathered. So as part of this proposal on this red area, there'll be the 4 lots. As part of it, the developer will have to extend at their sole expense the existing public road path all the way to the end of the cul-de-sac you see on the far eastern part of the road. So where now it kind of ends at a tree line, now it will have to cross a wetland crossing area and then proceed eastward to the end. So in the end, the road would go all the way to the end of the cul-de-sac bulb, not stop halfway. And as part of that, like I said, that cost is on the shoulders of the developer. But in the end, when it's all done and they enter into agreement with the city would eventually accept it as a full public road and assume all maintenance responsibilities along it. One of the things that have come up as a question is there is a wetland crossing. If you kind of look at the map that we have up on the screen right now, there's kind of a wetland area that right as you kind of just get off that existing cul-de-sac, that's kind of in the center of the map here. That wetland complex is a very narrow single lane crossing right now, so the applicants have been kind of told, or the development team, that as they pursue further with the road development, they will have to probably work with the DNR and or any other government agency that has jurisdiction over the wetland crossing, because they're going to have to make that wider. So that could involve either some kind of culvert or expanding that wetland area. So that's not something the city has jurisdiction over. It really falls under DNR review, and DNR will have to be reviewing that as the design comes further. But historically, because there's already a crossing there, I've seen many other divisions very similar to this, where especially if there's an existing crossing, they've allowed those crossings to be expanded as long as they're expanded to the most minimal necessary to meet the safe road requirements. Otherwise, on the certified survey map here, 4 lots like you see, the western lot's the largest lot, the other lots kind of get smaller. One of the existing lots will contain an existing home and an existing outbuilding. These do all front on Big Muskego Lake, even though there's a large cattail fringe, they all are frontage on Big Muskego Lake, excuse me. But otherwise, staff is recommending approval pending and subject to any kind of technical corrections, which still have to be reviewed by engineering, and subject to the detailed road design and stuff being approved by the city. Yes.
We do have a few people that want to speak, so before we have our discussion, Cheryl Kloss.
Hello. Cheryl Kloss, West 150, South 8226 Harvest Court. I am the property right before the cul-de-sac, but the tail end of my property does wrap around the next door neighbor, so there is some wetland that I do own that is connected to the wetland in question here. My concern is the expansion of the road into that said wetland. Once you bring a wider road through and the city does the improvements, they're also going to have to do the maintenance, the salting during the winter time. I'm just concerned about water quality since everything does drain to the lake. I don't need any more invasive species in my property, so I'm just concerned that with the salt, there is an impact on the quality of the waterways. Additionally, that area is marked within city maps as a high conservation priority. And so that is my main concern, that you're taking this large tract of land that has preserved many of the features, that is deemed a high conservation priority, and you're now dividing it up. It's my understanding, looking at the city's comprehensive plan for conservation areas, that these large tracts of property should somehow be preserved. And in reading that, I don't know if the city has ever approached the owners or if there's ever been a discussion about bringing that into one of those conservation areas. That's one of my main concerns. Additionally, with the subdivision going from one large lot down to 4, it's going to, what I'm presuming to be a company, a development company. And after that, could there be the possibility for further land divisions? Are we guaranteed that these are just going to be single-family homes? Condos, apartments? Everything right now states, it's for, I believe, low-density residential use, but we know things can change down the road. I am completely and adamantly opposed to this project. just based on the quality of life as we know it down there. It's a very quiet, dead-end road. My kids can play outside. I don't have to be worried about increased traffic. I just think that this completely changes the whole ambiance of the area by bringing in more homes. Thank you.
I'm going to mention something real quick because, I'd rather address comments that come up. The conservation high priority, that was a good point. That's one thing that, talking with our conservation coordinator at the city, we looked at this site as a whole, as that's part of what we do in the review. Lots 1 and 2, when you go back far enough in the photos, and old growth woods are a part of what makes things high priority conservation. And looking at the photos, lots 1 and 2, the areas that aren't wetlands, if you look far enough back, we're actually tilled area. I think some of those are now. So there wasn't any big concern talking with our city forester and looking at the plan and historic photos for lots 1 and 2. Lot 3, we assume there won't be a lot of change to because there's already an existing house and a fairly large outbuilding. And lot 4, we definitely acknowledge there's a lot of old growth, quality woods there, and the wetlands on top of that. Wetlands have to be preserved no matter what. So wetlands are automatically preserved whether they're conservation priority or not. But on lot 4, one of the things we do have in this resolution, I forgot to mention, this will need to go to Park and Conservation Commission because of that environmental, and the preliminary info from the city forester or conservation coordinator is that we're probably going to recommend a single defined building pad on lot number 4, since lot number 4 does have, and it's a large lot, quality features and woods on it. And we've done that before, that when there's a lot that's in the conservation plan that has high quality woods, we define one defined building pad that could maybe fit a house in and out building and potentially a driveway. But other than that, they wouldn't be able to disturb any vegetation outside that building pad. If it's a wooded lot, we agree. We want to keep it wooded as much as possible. So that's something that Park and Conservation will have to review in a future date if this goes further.
What is potentially a driveway?
Well, wherever they choose to locate their driveways, I guess I meant to word it, yeah. They'll need a driveway, it's just where do they put it?
That was
Potential location, I meant.
Park and walk in.
Location. Thank you.
And the state will address the road concerns, correct?
No, road is strictly city engineering.
Is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a city road, so we have very specific predefined road determinations. The state will determine the wetland crossing.
That's what
I'm sorry, yeah. But my experience is it's not a matter of if they'll allow it, it's more so what will they require to be done to make it environmentally friendly. That's probably the best way to word it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then we have Aaron Gamal.
Hello, I am Erin Gamal. I live at West 150, South 8235 Harvest Court. My property is directly north of what would be proposed Lot 4. We would share a property border. My driveway access currently empties into what is the temporary cul-de-sac for Harvest Court. It's my understanding from a conversation with Adam that my driveway, my culverts, and my yard would have to be reconstructed as part of this project because that cul-de-sac is going to be removed as it is temporary. My question is, what sort of notification, communication am I going to be receiving? Because if my driveway is being ripped up, my culvert's being ripped up, how am I going to get in and out of my house? Where can I park my car if the entire road is under construction? How do I get in and out? What sort of notifications would I receive? At present moment, my driveway ends outside of the 30-foot right-of-way. Am I going to have to incur any cost of re-improving my yard up to the publicly dedicated right-of-way? I don't have that information, and that's something that I feel a city should need to address before approving any additional development and road changes, because I don't know those answers. Additionally, with the proposed Lot 4, I know you've stated, Adam, that there's a question over where the house would be located. If you look at that lot, there is wetland. Along that wetland is where the proposed mound system would be. There is a smaller tract of trees with a clearing cut through that for an electric company right away. Is that right away going to need to be removed, changed? What's going to happen there? Because in my personal opinion, there would not be enough room for a house to occur between the right of way and the wetland in relation to the approximate area where the mound system is located. Also, regarding this entire development,
The 2020 comprehensive plan for this parcel of land, I know Cheryl has touched on this regarding the high conservation priority. The city has also designated this as the entire northern shore of Big Muskego Lake is a historical area of importance due to the nature of the Potawatomi tribe that used to reside there. Those of us that live down there have done our best to disturb it minimally. I know one of my personal fears when our house was built was whether or not we would find any sort of Native American remains that have been left behind. The closer we get to the lake, there has been more and more evidence that this was an area that Native Americans did live in, and it would be my wish that this could be preserved as much as possible. I also do question whether or not Lot 3 or Lot 4 of this proposed development could be subdivided again, as those are sizable lots. My understanding is lots 1 and 2 are a smaller size and are not really feasible for subdividing due to the lot size requirements for having private sewer and well. With all of these lots, because they are on the lake, I am wondering if they will be allowed to dredge out the lake to provide them with lake access or not. I know that when the Big Muskego Lake drawdown happened several decades ago at this point in time, that was the time for homeowners to dredge out the cattails because they are rather thick and cumbersome along the northern edge of the lake there, and that was when people were able to dig it out and put a pier in and gain access to the lake. I'm wondering if the additional lots down there will be provided lake access and if that will happen. I can say that I do not fully support this project. I have severe questions. It will change the entire scope of our neighborhood. As it stands now, I don't have to worry about where my kids are going to get on the bus. I live at the end of the street. The bus has to stop at my house. We're not talking a busy city street, but it does impact the neighbors significantly to have this development go in. Thank you.
Yeah, as far as notification of road improvements, engineering staff I made a special note of it, will make sure to work with the applicants and more so whoever ends up developing this road, the contractor. That will have to be one of the improvements that we put in our developers agreement with them, is that there's proper notification and things to give owners ample time to address and figure parking arrangements. I mean, road expansions like this do happen. It's not like it's unheard of, so it's always addressable. The key is proper notice, so we can make that a condition of a developer's agreement. As far as things like future divisions, we never really deem something undividable in the future. I mean, I can tell you lots 1, 2, and 3, as they sit today, based upon frontage requirements and stuff, would not be able to be redivided, at least on sewer or septic with today's rules. Can't guarantee that about number 4, but we normally can't guarantee that. If someone can show it in a way that's going to be practical and feasible, just given how little frontage is there next to the wetland, I think 4 would be very hard to subdivide further. But that hasn't been that's not part of the proposal today. But if someone would want to try something, that would go through its own separate process at that time. As far as what kind of impact the road expansion would have on those neighbors, there should be no financial impact to the people that live along the road. The developer who would be putting in the new road, as part of their road improvements, will have to be the ones to modify the old cul-de-sac. They'll have to be the ones to reconstruct or rebuild the driveways. They'll be the ones to redo the ditching. Since ultimately they're the cause, I don't mean that negatively, but since they're the cause of this happening, they're responsible for taking care of everything and making it as if this was done at day one and almost never existed. And that cul-de-sac, like I said, was meant to be temporary. In fact, it's not even in a right-of-way. It's in easements to show its temporary nature. As far as last one, dredging the lake, that's strictly a DNR thing. DNR does still allow dredging when there's water there. It's easier when there's no water, but they still have to allow it when there is water if someone goes through the permit process.
Okay, thanks, Adam. Brian James?
I'm going to let my wife go first.
All right, that would be Gail James. Are you going to let her go first?
Yeah.
Or speak for you?
I forget here. Okay, Gail James, West 150, South 8234, Harvest Court. Yes, I used to live in that log house that's down there, and prior to that, my parents did. That was their homestead. I did have to sell it for very many reasons. A lot of it was due to the fact of memories, and I had to escape those memories. I live across the street from my daughter, Erin Gamal, so I also encompass part of that cul-de-sac. When Scott and Kelly Wells approached us that they were interested in buying, I was delighted in selling them the house because they had this beautiful, well-mannered, growing family. And I got the impression from them that they were going to stay there, and this was his dream. They have this lake access and all this room for his kids to run. He was thinking of putting a baseball diamond in. I heard rumors of a theater that he wanted to add on to his house. And he did add on to the house just to make it work better for his family. For some reason, they decided to move down on Bass Bay where the multi-million-dollar homes are, and thought they could live and divide, somehow afford both homes. I don't know, that's their business. But if they were to sell this house and this land as a whole to someone else, I can understand it. But to divide it is killing me. And because my parents used to let people, what do you call them, that come and look for arrows, old Indian arrows, they would find dozens of these things on the land. And especially when the farmer used to till. This is a beautiful, beautiful piece of land. It should not be divided for any way or shape or form. It's just meant to be there. That's why there's old oaks and there's deer and there's so much naturalness down there that by dividing it and letting more homes encroach in there, everything's going to be disturbed. Everything's going to go away. It's not going to be the natural thing. You have a 2020 Conservation Act, and part of it is the North Shore of Big Muskego. Dividing it goes against everything that the city has set forth as conservation. We had thought about it at times, but I talked to Adam, I talked to Jeff when they were there. We were told that that road leading into, by the log house, from the main road to the log house, would have to be city width. Now, if you're going to shrink it down for these developers, that goes against everything that was told to us at the time when we even gave an inkling of thought of doing anything down there. You cannot just change things because they're developers and we weren't. Though I did develop the other part, but all of mine is what we developed then. My father, my husband, and myself. My mother had since passed. No lot is smaller than 2 acres. They're all on well, they're all on septic. I did the road. I know what it cost. How many years ago was it? Too many years ago to put that road in then. To do this now is cost prohibitive. I don't know where they're getting their financing from, but I know that they have like 10 or 12 companies that they all go right down the road to. So I'm totally, totally opposed to the division of this. But if you guys do decide to do this, I would ask and request that that log house not be torn down for any reason or rehab. That is one thing, because like I said, when I sold it to Kelly and Scott, I was very happy that there was a good family moving in that house. That was our homestead, but I had to leave. So that's my point. And you know something? You don't need another gas station on Jensville Road.
Did you want to come up or not? Yeah. Okay.
Brian James, West 150, South 8234, Harvest Court. As my wife said, we did develop the land down there. We're the ones that gave the city the dedication in order to build 2 houses back there. When we discussed this with the city and also the DNR, we were told we could not disturb that wetland. Right now there's a 12-foot wide paved road with wetland on either side. The wetland is approximately 5 feet off of that paved road. So the only thing that we could see to cross that was putting in a bridge. Now, the city does have the 15-foot rule that you can't disturb the wetland. So putting a culvert in, I don't feel is an option, because we would be disturbing the wetland then. How do you get a 24-foot road in?
Well, I can talk about that.
You know, there's a 60-foot right-of-way. So, you know, how do you get a 24-foot road in an area that's only 20 feet wide? As far as for the rest of it, the proposed new asphalt drive going down to the house on lot 3, when they come up, I will be having headlights in my living room, my kitchen. I'm opposed to the relocation. I understand the reason why they're doing it, so that they can have access to lot 4 off of Harvest Court. So I'm against this proposal, but it's up to your hands.
Thanks. Did you want to?
Yeah. So one about the road width. I didn't, and I apologize, I misspoke. They're not allowed to make any more narrow of a road than our city specs. Whatever the city specs require for a road pavement width, that doesn't change when it comes to the wetland crossing. It's just there's obviously not ditches and stuff because you're not going to put a ditch arbitrarily through a wetland. So the road will be the same no matter who would have built it, no matter when they would have built it. As far as the crossing of the wetland, like I said, the city never has the ability to say no to that. That strictly always has been and always will be a DNR concern. And there are some options that might be cost prohibitive. We're not trying to hide that, depending on what solution the DNR comes with. If it's culvert, if it's a bridge, whatever it is, that has to be looked at yet. This approval is contingent upon that being determined. And then as far as the 15-foot rule about not disturbing within 15 feet of a wetland, you can disturb grading work within 15 feet of a wetland, just not into it. Now, if the DNR grants you a permit, obviously then they're allowing you to disturb the wetland itself. But you can't build any kind of road unless it's part of a DNR permit within 15 feet of a wetland. The DNR gives the permit, that 15-foot rule goes away, and that's actually written into the code. Now, another thing, as we talked about with CUGs, how the state law has been relaxed, for lack of a better term. Wetlands are a big one that have just recently either been signed or are about to be signed by the state legislature and the governor. Wetland rules are actually getting a lot less strict. So depending when this is built, and that's not the city's control, once again, it falls in the DNR's hands, the wetland rules are changing. For small wetland impacts, they're requiring less and less hurdles for people to jump through, is how they word it. And I'm not saying I agree with that or not, that's beside the point. But that is something that just goes along with some of these other state law changes that are occurring.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question about that? Just the wetlands. Is this? It's based on whether it's high quality wetlands or they determine different levels of quality, at least for development. Does the same apply to roads?
I've never heard of a case where they have not allowed an existing wetland crossing to be expanded. Personally, not that we deal with a ton of them. They're going to look at quality. I think that sometimes depends on if there needs to be mitigation or not and things like that. I know at least that's how the old rules were. Depending on the type of quality, it wasn't a matter of if you could still cross it, because they're never trying to stop means of egress. Okay. But it's usually what's the least impact possible to those wetlands, and then depending upon the quality, is there mitigation that's required.
Okay, that answered the question. Thank you.
But the wetlands are
DNR, and sometimes depending upon quality and amount of impact, could be even a higher, maybe Army Corps of Engineers or something, but DNR has taken most of that.
I know it well. I feel your pain. It's happened to me when I couldn't build the way in 2000, and now someone right next to me can. You know, the 2 acres I've got are now.
I guess the question is that the road that is there now was the road that was there 50 years ago, which was an old cattle passage. It was just paved over. So, I mean, we're essentially talking about an old cattle passage. We're talking about trying to get into a minimum width city road, which, I'm sorry, I may have missed that. What is a minimum width?
I think it's typically 24 feet of paving.
So now we're talking about doubling it in size when it was designed for the passage of a tractor, one single vehicle, or a herd of cattle.
I've seen the DNR, and like I said, DNR approval. I've seen scenarios where the DNR took literally a grass path that had a tiny little culvert, a pipe, that they've allowed to be improved to full city roads in the city.
So it's possible this whole corner could be a bridge. That's possible, right?
If that's what the DNR dictates.
Yeah.
But the land division itself, what we're looking at is different. I just want you to understand that. It's different than what. There's so much of this that we don't have control over. The ability and the right to divide land is paramount. It's their land.
Okay, I have a question to ask them. you go ahead and you approve this land division. And their only option is to put in a bridge, and they decide not to do it. Is the city that desperate for money that we need to divide this up into lots right away? Or shouldn't we do the preliminary work first to find out if a road is even possible?
All contingent on that.
Yeah, this approval, even though if they approve it, it's only approved if they get that approval. If they don't get the approval, this approval goes away.
And then if they get the approval, because what you said after that, and they choose not to build it, they won't get the division.
Even if the CSM is recorded?
It won't be recorded till they won't be recorded till the road would be completely done, built, and
Because
approved.
I know when we did it, we came in with a lot of preliminaries.
Yeah, no, we've changed how we do our.
It's different. Now the CSM can't even give her.
Well, no, we came in with conceptual drawings and approvals and whatnot, even the grading plans.
When you were here,
Yeah.
It was a lot more lenient for you.
Not really. That's when the city didn't have a real engineer either.
Well, so
Yeah, well, no.
catch me if you can thing, right? Yeah, so I'm just saying though, these wetland things are just so everyone's aware. They're going, that's DNR, and I've been bit by that too. And it's the city has nothing to do with that.
Oh, yes?
Hi, I'm Teresa Maki. I'm actually the developer of this proposal. So we actually spoke with Travis Schroeder of the DNR, and he said there's under 10,000 square feet of impact, so it'll require just a general permit. In addition, once we hopefully get approval, we're going to work in coordination with the DNR and Lynch and Associates to make sure that road is engineered properly. On top of that, you know, we're aware that there's 3 houses in the back that currently have no right-of-way, and we're willing to pay for that at our expense, and it'll ultimately increase their property value. On top of that, yeah, there's a lot of question. There's a lot of land here, right? Lot 4 could have been divided again, but we're only proposing 3 additional lots, no more. And lot number 3, we would keep the existing home there. We would not tear it down. So, and in kind of relation to comments regarding the financing of the road, the financing is there, and quite honestly, if it's there, it's not one else's business. So that's how I pretty much feel about that.
Does anybody have any other questions or?
I have an additional question.
Yes?
The sort of the bend shown on that road through the wetland on lot 4, the lot designated lot 2 CSM number 11079. There is a wetland on that lot that is not shown on the CSM, in which the road would be disturbing wetland on both sides.
And this only has to show wetlands within the CSM boundary. That doesn't mean that they're not immune to any rules with it when they do the road construction plans. Keep in mind, there's going to be a whole huge set of documents that are engineering review, that are going to govern the road design that get approved by Public Works Committee. This CSM, the surveyor by law, is only has to show wetlands contained within the CSM boundary. That's outside the boundary.
This is a follow-up to what Ms. Smockley here has stated regarding the 10,000, you say 10,000 square feet of wetland disturbed? Was it 1,000 or 10,000? 10,000. Does that take into account wetland on both sides of the road there? Or is it only taking into account there's under 10,000?
It will have to take into account both.
What does your figure include both sides?
What I got from Travis Schroeder was under 10,000 square feet of impact.
What is Mr. Schroeder looking at? I guess that's the
Yeah,
question.
I guess. Well, he was like Adam said, it would have to be both sides.
Yeah, any wetlands impacted anywhere. Doesn't matter what side of the road or left or right.
I was only looking at the proposed CSM land.
They did not give approval yet. They're just giving comment.
Right.
When they review their full plans, will be a full-blown construction plan with all the wetlands impacted anywhere. And if they're higher, then that's a different set of rules potentially.
Does a delineator come out to determine that? Do you know?
If they haven't been delineated within the last so many years, they would have to, yeah. But I think they may have been within the last 5 years. But if they weren't, they would have to redo it.
Okay.
Follow-up question on that. If the wetland's been delineated in the past 5 years. I believe this was since July of 2013. So coming up July 2018 would be 5 years. Does this project have to start prior to July?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, so potentially, given how well things progress, the wetlands could have to be redelineated in order for approval with
Yeah,
this?
depending when the approvals of everything would occur, there could be potential for wetland redelineation. I can't, our engineering staff would look at that in more detail. But sometimes redelineation can be the DNR recertifying what was done before. They don't always require redelineation.
Question, if you do go through with this, what it looks like you are going to, how about the rest of us? Mozinski, Jeff Mozinski sitting behind me, he's got, I think, 3 acres. So then maybe seeing that road's going to be fixed, he can cut off an acre and sell it to somebody if he gets it perked. And then we have extra land. We could do the same thing. Jeff Fry, he's got 2 acres. He could chop off an acre. Are we going to be allowed to do that on their dime?
Well, the road will be done.
So that would be their dime.
The road that's already done, yeah, it's irrelevant. The road will be built. So you couldn't do a division until the road's done already. So
Well, I'm
the road will
quite
be
aware
done.
of that because we did all the work to put it in now.
I would say, with all due respect to everybody, ifs and buts for candy and nuts, be Christmas every day. It's just been a long session, and I understand your concerns, but we have to deal with the situation that's in front of us right now. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but we cannot forecast every potential situation.
Well, I
and
just
that's
wanted
not what,
to.
that's not what they're
Sorry,
here
I just
for.
wanted to ask to see if this is still going to be possible for us. Then, because by them doing that, that opens up a whole thing
Sure
for
it does, and it
my
comes through
daughter
the exact
and
same
for
process
us.
every single time.
The-
And that's where we're
But
here
I don't
listen,
want to
but-
hear that because there's additional houses down there that you don't want anymore.
Once it's a public road, there's no limit to number of houses if they meet the land division requirements. No public road, the city can
It's a
limit
matter
houses
of
on.
if it falls within the code and in our jurisdiction here. And
May I just let it be stated into your minutes that the old owner of the property is highly dismayed at what is going on, do not like it at all. And the whole reason that my parents bought all of that out there was to keep it as open and untouched as possible. Now, they're both dead, so I'm speaking for them because I am the only. Okay? And like I said, when I sold it to Wells, he had grandiose ideas of building onto the house and his family and everything. Why they moved down another block, I have no idea. But I'll tell you, selling that house the first time with 16 acres was hard enough, but selling that house with even less acreage is going to be even worse. And please don't allow the moving of that road, because it will affect the house I'm currently living in. And that's just like a double whammy. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So if there's any more discussion here? Okay, please cast your vote. It's approved unanimously. I guess we have to, thank you.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I think we're all tired.
Ay, 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 ay.
Ay, 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 ay.
We need a stretch break next
How are they working? How are they working, Kevin?
Well, I'll joke about it over here, but that, so at that point, it's no one's fault. It's just the way it works, and I can't.
The thing that sucks about wetland delineation is it's somewhat